In my first life, I died old, broken, and completely alone on a pile of rotting corpses. My entire family got slaughtered, even the children and pets, by Hwa Moogi, the immortal martial god who devoured our entire world. Then the Great Regression technique tore open, and I woke up inside my teenage body on the day I lost the demon skirmish. A lifetime of foreknowledge and peak martial arts mastery now burns behind my eyes. The weakling Faye used to push around his back to take everything. Take 5 seconds to like and subscribe. The algorithm loves it, and honestly, so do I. But none of this happened overnight. Let me take you back to the day everything truly broke open. Spirit Master Seong stared in complete silence at the midnight visitor. As the master of the Gui Gate, he had faced every kind of intruder during his long life, walking through sword mountains and blade forests. The arrogant, the meticulous, the master fighters, the cunning, yet not one had ever left his manner breathing. But this guest was different. Staring into weary eyes that had clearly tasted every bitter flavor life could offer, Seong had only one dark thought: today might be his own death anniversary. Swallowing his dread, Seong asked if they had met before. The stranger simply said no, his voice low and surprisingly pleasant. And when Seong asked what could possibly bring him here so late, the man answered that he only had a simple request. The Spirit Master, who literally felt the gates of hell opening behind his back, let out a massive sigh of relief and told him to speak. Then came the most mind-blowing request he had ever heard. The man calmly asked to be sent back into the past. In the heavy silence that followed, Seong asked how any human could possibly turn back time. The man replied that since Seong was the only one who could use the legendary regression technique, he should already know the answer. Seong did not deny it. He just asked how this stranger knew about a secret art passed down only within his own family. The man gave a single name, Seo Jin. Hearing that name, the one Seong had desperately yearned to hear for years, hit him like an absolute flood. The man explained she had been his companion during his wandering days, but now, she was dead. All breath left the old master in a long, broken sigh. He and his sister had worked tirelessly since childhood to complete the forbidden technique their father never could, until 10 years ago, when she finally broke under the crushing weight and ran away in the middle of the night. He understood her because she had wasted her entire 20s on their family's obsession. The traveler told him not to worry about revenge, he had already taken care of it, then delivered her final words that she had lived her life completely without regret, and hoped Seong would do the same, that he would finally live his own life instead of burying it in this technique. The Spirit Master sank into silent grief. The man waited for him to pull himself together before asking the ultimate question: was the technique actually finished? Seong nodded slowly, admitting that in his generation, he had finally managed to complete it. Pure joy flashed across the stranger's face, and when he smiled openly like that, it was obvious he was incredibly handsome. But Seong quickly warned him that there was no telling what era he would return to. Maybe 10 years back, maybe 30, or even to infancy. With bad luck, maybe just yesterday. The man smiled and said he was a pretty lucky guy, but the Spirit Master bitterly replied that the technique was completely impossible anyway. If it actually worked, he would have gone back himself a long time ago. Sure, he had completed it, but he had never gathered the materials. The traveler simply answered that he would collect them himself. Out of 99 ingredients, Seong said 5 had always been impossible to get, starting with something no one could ever hold: the Thunderbell, sacred treasure of the Heavenly Wind Cult, the brutal successors of the Blood Sect who rule the entire wilderness. The spell required the exact sound waves produced when the bell rang, but it sat right behind the throne of their hot-tempered leader, a tyrant who would slaughter Seong's entire family for even asking to borrow it. But the stranger just promised to get it, vanishing before the master could stop him. Is he completely insane? The Spirit Master wondered, immediately regretting that he had not asked more questions about his sister. Several years later, on a sleepless night, Seong saw him again, and guys, this next part is wild. The massive Thunderbell was strapped across his back. The Spirit Master examined the artifact over and over, completely speechless. There was no mistaking the distinct flow of the Blood Sect's energy through the ancient metal. The traveler simply said he was a man of his word, then casually asked for the next material. Seong sighed deeply, knowing that, lucky or not, this next task was truly impossible. The divine incense brazier belonging to the divine dragon family, the strongest righteous faction to rise after the martial alliance collapsed. They were rumored to be even stronger than the Heavenly Wind Cult. The man just promised to return with the brazier. When Seong asked what would stop him from just stealing the Thunderbell, the man smirked he would simply tell the Heavenly Wind Cult exactly who took it. With that, he vanishes once more, leaving Seogong wondering if this is finally the year the man fails. But one autumn, the stranger returns, holding the legendary divine incense brazier. Seogong cannot believe his own eyes. When he begs to hear the story, the traveler just shrugs, explaining that writing it down would fill half a dozen books, and they have no time. What was it? Seogong wonders what drives this man to pull off the impossible. When someone with that level of terrifying talent could easily live a comfortable life in this era. So he asks if revenge is his true motive, and the stranger quietly agrees, admitting that even with all his skills, he can never have vengeance in this lifetime. But who could possibly be so powerful to make his revenge impossible? When the stranger utters the name Hwa Moogi, Seogong feels his throat completely tighten up. Hwa Moogi carries two terrifying titles. The first is Sambong. It sounds like a name meant for some gentle, scholarly old master, except that in his case, the word bong does not mean peak. It literally means to seal. The Justice Martial Alliance, sealed. The Evil Alliance, sealed. The Heavenly Demon Cult, completely sealed. The heads of the three absolute factions holding the martial world together all died by his hand, and anyone who refused to bow down was brutally slaughtered. Because of that, his second title is the greatest of all time. After sealing those three powerhouses, Hwa Moogi declared his own domain, the Ultimate Supreme Alliance, and thousands of martial artists flocked to his side. Those who watched him unify the entire martial world ended up naming him the Immortal Martial God. Seogong blurts out that even going back in time will not save him against the greatest martial genius to ever walk the earth, a monster born with a blessed heavenly martial body. The traveler calmly replies that he was also called a genius growing up, and that he, too, possesses a heavenly martial body. Completely stunned, Seogong finally asks who this mysterious traveler is. The man looks at him and reveals that the heavenly demon, the legend Hwa Moogi murdered, was actually his father. Seogong staggers backward in utter shock, never imagining this visitor is the direct heir of the heavenly demon. Suddenly, all those impossible feats make perfect sense. When asked how he survived, the stranger unties his robe, exposing a scar so hideous across his chest that Seogong gasps. The man explains that when he first woke up, he was buried deep inside a massive pile of rotting corpses, barely clawing his way out right before they filled the mass grave. His hatred for Hwa Moogi is not because the monster tried to murder him, or cut down his father, or even slaughtered his treacherous brother. After all, what is death to someone whose entire life is already drenched in the dark, demonic blood of his cult? No, the unforgivable sin is that Hwa Moogi did not just stop at killing the servants and harmless everyday workers. He butchered the innocent children, slaughtered the family pets, and systematically wiped out every single living creature that crossed his path. Seogong stammers that it must be some horrible rumor, but the stranger simply mutters that his belief does not change the brutal truth. Deep down, Seogong can feel the honesty in his words. This man would never lie about such horror. The world's view of Hwa Moogi does not matter anymore. The stranger mutters that to the public, he is probably some grand hero praised for ending the demonic threat. But to him, Hwa Moogi is just a ruthless butcher who wiped out his entire family without showing an ounce of mercy. Since he cannot slay him in this era, he must go back to end him. And before he lands that fatal blow, he has one burning question: why did someone so powerful feel the need to slaughter innocent children? Pressing his palm against his scarred chest, he whispers that his guard had died protecting him, taking a blade right to this spot. She was a loyal companion, who never got to marry, or even make other friends because her entire life was spent keeping him safe. So he demands Seogong stop wasting time and name that third ingredient. This is where it gets crazy. Seogong lets out his heaviest sigh yet, muttering that this is one item the traveler will absolutely never be able to obtain. It is the core essence of a 10,000-year-old carp, last seen 3 centuries ago, and likely extinct across the entire Earth. The man curses this ridiculously difficult technique, asking half seriously if he should just cut Seogong down right then and there. But then, he decides to hold back his hand after coming this far, telling the old master to wait, even if this search takes forever. A fish is still just a fish, so it has to be swimming out there in some body of water, and he will hunt it down. Watching him walk off to face yet another impossible task, Seogong realizes the traveler's name and his family's betrayal do not really matter anymore. Decades fly by like a relentless river, and the world remains completely under Hwa Moogi's control. Rumors whisper that he has grown even more monstrously powerful, pushing his body toward the absolute peak of martial arts. 12 of his most fanatical disciples govern the land known as the 12 Zodiac Kings. But despite unifying the martial world, life only grows darker. Cruelty and corruption run wild beneath their rule, where those who bow gain instant glory, while anyone who dares to stand against them loses their life. The Martial Alliance, the Unorthodox Alliance, and the demonic cult remained completely shut away. Everyone agreed on one thing: as long as Hwa Moogi was drawing breath, none of their gates would ever open. Just as the terrible thought that he had died alone in some nameless valley grew too heavy to bear, the mysterious traveler finally returned. He was in his absolute prime when they first met, but now stood as a middle-aged man with gray hair. His face and skin were deeply tanned, as if he had walked to the ends of the earth. Covered in fresh scars, his cold, clear eyes remained completely unchanged. And look at this, he held out the core essence of a legendary 10,000-year carp. The spirit master gasped, realizing the mythical beast actually existed. The traveler simply replied that he had searched every corner of this world, claiming he could map the entire central plains with his eyes closed, and that the real miracle was not finding it, but keeping his sanity along the way. A wild thought suddenly struck Xiao Gong. Maybe this was not a carp's essence at all, but the man's own sky-blue resolve literally hardened into stone. When Xiao Gong asked if he wanted to brag first, the man said he would brag later after he killed that bastard, dried him like a mummy, and boasted about it for the rest of his days, so everyone knew. Hearing you joke like that is pretty strange, Xiao Gong said, wanting nothing more than to just sit and laugh with this exhausted martial master. But the traveler was as busy as ever, and immediately demanded the fourth ingredient. Money, Xiao Gong replied. And when asked how much, he demanded 5 million yang. The man answered with his usual calm he would get it. Xiao Gong knew even 10 billion yang would not stop him. But the spirit master stopped him. He offered to pay it himself from his family's ancestral savings, since completing this legendary regression technique was his own family's ultimate dream too. He thanked Xiao Gong with genuine warmth, suggesting they share a drink, but the old master said he could only have one before leaving. The traveler smiled, calling him a heartless friend. They sat together on a rock in the yard, slowly draining their massive cups. Back when we first met, the man recalled, we both burned with fire. My body ages, Xiao Gong replied, but my heart is unchanged. The man smiled, saying they would both return to youth. Whether he returned at 50, 60, or 100 years old, he was still the same man. His time had stopped long ago. If the regression works, Xiao Gong whispered, please come find me. The old master let out a heavy sigh, begging him to stop his arranged marriage. Imagine that hearing this ridiculous request, the traveler burst into the first genuine laugh Xiao Gong had ever seen. The old master insisted he was totally serious. Stopping it was worth far more than 5 million yang, since he preferred living alone. The man agreed to do it. After Xiao Gong revealed the exact year of the wedding and made him promise twice, the traveler gave his word. Together, they finished the last of the liquor. When the traveler asked for the final piece, Xiao Gong named the heavenly demon spirit. Hearing that, the man's eyes went pitch black. It is your late father's treasure, Xiao Gong said. The man knew his father never let it leave his side, but admitted he had no clue where it was. If Hwa Moogi possessed it, all their painful work was entirely wasted. Even if it was still with the demonic cult, getting it back would be suicidal. The sealed cult was under a new leader who would instantly slaughter him the moment he showed his face. Let us pray it is still in the cult, Xiao Gong muttered, warning him to hurry before old age took him. Do not dare die before I get back, the traveler replied. After draining his final cup, the man departed. Xiao Gong stood alone, watching him fade into the distance. The traveler did not return. Season after season, no news of any sudden conflict inside the demonic cult reached the old spirit master. Still, he kept his ears strained, and the long years simply rolled by. Xiao Gong grew ancient, the gray shadow of death blooming across his withered face. He sat quietly on the porch, staring blankly at the empty spot where his friend once stood. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes, convinced he was seeing a ghost as a battered figure stumbled toward him in pure agony. It was him, the traveler, who had left for that final ingredient. But he was physically unrecognizable. His face so utterly ruined he looked like a completely different person. His right eye was gone, his left arm completely severed, and his entire body was literally drenched in fresh, dripping blood. Xiao Gong stood utterly speechless. The traveler silently handed over the heavenly demon spirit before collapsing onto the dirt, completely exhausted and unable to speak a single word. Barely breathing, they whispered that they had to get to the ritual chamber immediately. Supporting his bloody weight, Xiao Gong slowly guided him into the chamber, where the massive ritual array sat fully prepared. He placed the heavenly demon spirit directly in the center, and the exact second it touched down, the formation erupted with light. Strange, glowing runes spun wildly in the air. Xiao Gong stands before it, chanting as brilliant blue and red light floods the entire space. The thunderbell tolls while thick incense rises from the divine brazier, and as the chant climbs to its peak, the main ingredients fuse together, shaping a shimmering portal of light like a doorway into another time. We actually did it, Xiao Gong cries, his face overflowing. This was the exact moment his family's centuries-old wish finally came true. He walks over to the man slumped unconscious against the pillar, choosing not to wake him, only whispering that he was truly sorry. He decided to steal this regression for himself, the guilt eating at him because he knew how tirelessly the man had labored to gather these irreplaceable, legendary materials. He promises himself that he will find the man and warn him of the coming calamity. Rising toward the light, he mutters that returning to the past was his family's ancestral wish, and his own deepest desire as well. But just as he is about to step inside, a low, weary voice calls out from behind. The spirit master flinches and freezes instantly, realizing his devil's whole pressure point has already been sealed without him even noticing when it happened. The man he thought was out cold stands tall, demanding how Seo Gong could betray him of all people. He grabs Seo Gong by the throat, his eyes filled with burning hatred and a grief that runs even deeper. With his frail, elderly neck feeling ready to snap, Seo Gong chokes out that he must have lost his mind, begging for forgiveness. Honestly, he is absolutely certain the man is going to kill him, and if it were anyone else, it wouldn't even matter. But it shouldn't end like this, because only Seo Gong truly understands how much this man has suffered. Suddenly, the grip on his neck loosens. He confesses that he is a selfish bastard too, and it was only because he cared about his own goals that he gathered those legendary items. So it is fine, even though he would have slaughtered anyone else on the spot for this betrayal. But he understands Seo Gong, thanking the old master for waiting his entire life. Seo Gong's tears spill over in absolute guilt, wishing they had a better farewell. They really should have. And right as his tears fall, the entire world suddenly grinds to a complete halt. Seriously, you can feel the absolute dread in the air. A butterfly hangs motionless in mid-air like a painting, while grass blades stay bent in a wind that no longer blows. Seo Gong stands frozen, with his genuine tears suspended in the air, and in this absolute silence where time has stopped for everyone but him, a mysterious elder suddenly appears, announcing that the man has passed every test and is finally worthy of being sent back to the past. How could a mortal defy heaven's laws with mere mystical objects? The elder questions. He raises his hand, and the 5 legendary treasures the man spent his entire life gathering suddenly reappear, floating softly all around him. These are the exact materials that just vanished during the ritual, making him realize this elder is a supreme being far beyond humanity. The true ingredients of this legendary technique were never these physical artifacts, the elder reveals. It was the relentless effort poured into gathering them, and with a simple wave of his hand, the treasures dissolve into thin air. He passed because he spent his life sacrificing everything for a single goal, and forgiving Seo Gong was the ultimate, most painful test of all. Yet he overcame it with ease. The man's body trembles, having always believed the heavens were indifferent, only to now face their divine incarnation, and his shock quickly turns to rage as he demands if the heavens only deign to answer after pushing a mortal through absolute hell. "Do not be so angry," the elder replies calmly. "Mortals meet me far more often than you think, but your specific wish was not something I could grant so lightly." He cannot argue with that, because his desire was never about simple wealth or chasing beautiful women. His sole purpose is to return to the past, execute those who deserve to die, protect those who must live, and destroy Hwa Moogi first. But there is another crucial truth. He admits he simply wants to live his life properly this time around. Perhaps the real driving force behind his absolute desperation was not just his burning rage, but the bottomless regret of a life he never actually got to lead, always pushed along by some unseen force. He asks if the elder was the one pulling the strings. The elder only offers a small, awkward smile, asking what kind of life he wants after his revenge is complete. The man admits he has no idea. Whether he becomes the heavenly demon like his father, or lives quietly in peaceful seclusion, becomes a playboy chasing beautiful women, leaves the cult to hunt down villains, or turns into a rogue himself. He hasn't decided a single thing. The elder chuckles, saying he looks forward to seeing that new life and suggests they share a drink the next time they cross paths. With those parting words, he vanishes. Next time, the man murmurs, feeling deep down that the god will indeed appear before him once more. In an instant, the frozen world snaps back to life, and the butterfly flutters its wings, soaring high into the clear sky. The grass sways, and Seo Gong's tears finally splash onto the dirt, the old master still weeping and begging, saying he is truly, truly sorry, all while the man watched in complete silence. He'd never know his great regression technique had touched heaven's will, or that heaven made the final call. Yet, his art was the exact thread binding the man to it. Desperate, the spirit master pleaded with him, "Don't forget our sacred promise. You have to stop that marriage at all costs." The man just chuckled. Even on his deathbed, the old fool begged for the same thing, asking if his life was still a blazing hell. Seong yelled that if the woman refused to listen, the man should tear up the betrothal contract, do whatever it takes. "Fine then," the man said with a cold smile. As punishment for trying to betray me, you'll suffer that hell all over again. The spirit master wailed and begged, but the man only chuckled, walking into the light. Watching the radiant glow scatter, Seong was utterly devastated. His only desperate wish was that he wanted to go, too. Then, I opened my eyes. I'd opened and closed them countless times throughout my long life, but never in a moment as desperate as this one. My plea was simple: let me return to undo it all. And the sight before me now made every single hardship from my past life worth it. I was standing on a massive martial arts arena, wide as a plaza. Beyond the thousands of roaring spectators rose colossal demon statues. The giant red, blue, and yellow figures ringed the entire arena, their giant stone swords and fists meeting overhead to form a roof. Beyond them, a massive statue stood with arms crossed, gazing down arrogantly. A black demon, the ultimate symbol of our cult. And guys, it worked. I've actually come back. My chest tightened, my heart slamming as if it would burst clean through. As if celebrating my return, deafening cheers erupted from all directions as demonic followers crowded the arena. Then, the realization of what day this was hit me. Right on cue, a warrior stepped onto the stage from the opposite side. Today was the day of the new demon skirmish. This was exactly when my father made his shocking decree: the next leader wouldn't be limited to his own bloodline anymore. To prove his point, he threw a brutal martial arts tournament for the cult's younger generation, promising the ultimate champion a chance to challenge one of his two sons, with a single wish granted to the winner. After 10 days of bloodshed, the champion emerged and chose to challenge me. The crowd roared my name, the exact name Seong had been so desperate to learn. I was Hwa Moogi, the youngest of the Heavenly Demon's two sons. As they cheered, the skirmish champions scowled, sneering that by the end of this fateful match, the name on their lips would change. He warned that whoever I was, he wouldn't hold back. Back then, I was shocked he picked me over my older brother, but he had a hidden reason, smugly asking if I wanted to forfeit since he was so sure of his victory. And the truth is, in my first life, I didn't lose this duel from lack of skill. It was due to his despicable, underhanded scheme. He'd bribed my kitchen servants to lace my food with an energy-dispersing poison, a toxin that temporarily paralyzes your internal energy. This wasn't some basic drug either. It seemed completely harmless, only scattering my internal energy once my body felt the strain of combat. Only years later did I discover it was a rare strain called Black Queen, secretly manufactured and distributed by the Unorthodox Alliance. When I lost and reported it, my father only glared at me, basically scolding me for falling for such a petty trick. Blinded by shame, I made one reckless move after another, desperate to make up for that humiliating defeat. My real enemy was never my brother, it was my own impatience and fragile pride. Mistake piled on mistake, until I lost the succession battle entirely, and it all started with this single, crushing loss. But now, at this critical turning point, the first words out of my mouth are to ask this guy for his name again. Mocking laughter ripples through the arena. His face twists in fury, thinking I'm playing games, when I honestly just forgot his name. Disrespecting him, Gupyong-ho snaps, is an insult to his master. Ah, right. I say, Gupyong-ho. He's the fifth of the 7 disciples under the Bloodheaven Blade Demon Gyampa, one of our 8 demon supremes. And honestly, since he's barely the most average swordsman among those 7 disciples, I know for a fact he resorted to dirty tricks to win. So I tell him to keep his facts straight. I'm insulting him, not his esteemed master. At that, loud laughter erupts from the followers of the One-Sword Supreme, who absolutely despise the Bloodheaven Blade Demon. He spits, snarling that I must be suicidal to provoke him, but I completely ignore him, looking up instead at the Heavenly Demon. Even among thousands, his overwhelming presence stands out above everyone. Losing his temper, Gupyong-ho turns his confusion to pure rage, warning me that even without my inner strength, I'd better watch my step since his blade has no eyes. But I ignore him, taking stock of my younger body instead. It's so weird being young again. This sword in my hand feels like a total toy. Now, let's see if this body will actually obey me. He draws his dao with a massive flourish, but I just untie my own sword and lay it on the ground. After all, using a blade would totally give away my real skills. The crowd erupts in cheers. After all, it is just in a demon's nature to celebrate when someone gets thoroughly mocked like this. That completely lights his fury. He howls out that he won't kill me since I carry the cult leader's blood, but he is taking one of my arms. He closes the distance in a single bound, driving his saber straight at my shoulder. Watch how close this gets. I dodge his blade at the absolute last second. Incredible. All my worry about whether this younger body would actually listen to me was totally wasted. It reacts faster and way fiercer than I ever expected. It is almost like a reminder that this was me in my absolute prime, back when I could run all day and easily crush solid stone with my bare fists. A smile creeps up on its own, making me want to shout with joy. Seeing me grin just pushes him over the edge, and he snarls that this crazy bastard is actually laughing. His eyes roll wide as he swings openly, aiming directly for my vital points. Since he can channel inner strength directly into blade energy, I decide to stop playing around. Slipping past the saber reaching for my arm, I rush his chest. Before he can even gasp or try to guard, my elbow is already buried deep inside his solar plexus. Riding the recoil, I follow up with a barrage of hammers. The first quick strike caves his nose right in. The heavy second cracks his ribs. Remember, even without internal energy, we are martial artists trained from early childhood. We are talking about warriors who can drop a bull with bare hands. His body stands zero chance. I do not stop. As he screams and collapses, I grab his wrist and demand to know which hand poisoned me. This one. Then I leap and slam my foot down. I use my knee as a lever to channel all the force from my soles right up through my frame and snap the limb. The shock waves surge through his body, shattering his wrist, elbow, and shoulder at once. His agonizing scream is almost entirely unnecessary because anyone can see the arm he built all his techniques on is completely ruined. He will never fight again. Right on cue, cheers crash in from every side. This was no clumsy match, but a clean, decisive victory that thoroughly entertained the massive crowd. Though the followers of the Blood Heaven Blade Demon jeer, their voices are completely drowned under the roar. While the Blood Heaven Blade Demon himself, sitting right among them, shows absolutely nothing on his face and just watches. As the heat dies down, my father finally stands. The red dragon embroidered on his pristine white robe looks ready to leap straight to the heavens. Right beside him, the 8 demon supremes stand as one. Like a massive wave rolling across the grand hall, every single demonic follower rises and bows to the absolute ruler, heavenly demon Gamwene, the strongest of this era at least. For now, my father stares at me, his gaze so incredibly intense it feels like it might bore straight through my chest. Back in those days, I was completely terrified of that piercing look which always seemed to belittle whoever it landed on. My entire picture of him back then had been built purely on wild guesses and rumors. I really wish I could tell my younger self not to just invent people inside your head. The real answers are never hidden inside you, but in the actual person standing right in front of your face. This time I do not look away. He is only a man struggling not to lose his absolute authority, while managing 1,000 schemes aimed at his seat. The coldness is just the brutal price of that effort, something I can clearly see now, even though I was completely blind to it before. He asks what my wish is. His incredibly deep voice carries the power to intimidate even without internal energy laced through his words. Everyone leans forward, especially the 8 demon supremes. Since I never expected to actually return to this exact day, I just follow my gut. I say I want to go hunting with him, just the two of us, because I heard he loved hunting in his youth and want to learn from him. He flinches, clearly caught off guard, and you can bet the crowd is stunned, since they definitely expected me to demand the heir title or some legendary sword. He stares at me in absolute silence for a moment, then mutters gruffly that we leave at dawn before walking away. In that stark black and white scene, only the red heavenly demon moves. Every single martial artist bows his head in respect, and out of the thousands gathered, not a single sound can be heard. But as they depart, a venomous voice breaks the heavy silence, calling me an absolute idiot for asking for that. I turn around to see Gyong Ho being carried away by his senior disciples. His broken arms hang completely limp. I just throw up my hands and say I am sorry. Honestly, what was his name again? Ignored to the very end, he screams for his senior brother to kill me. But with the match over, no one dares to make a move. They only glare and carry him off. Now that I am back, your lives are not going to be nearly as fun as they used to be. I am incredibly grateful to the heavens for sending me back to this exact turning point of my life. And even though he tried to betray me at the absolute end, I am still thankful to Gui Ryanga for completing the Great Regression technique. I look up into the bright blue sky and smile, feeling just as young as I look. Back in my quarters, I stand right before a bronze mirror, the reflection of my younger self vivid and completely brimming with life. I feel like I could spend the entire day just staring at it. Then, my thoughts turn right back to Hwa Moogi. Finding and taking him out before he grew strong would have been simple. Too simple. But tracking him down was never that easy, since he literally appeared in the martial world out of nowhere and went into seclusion right after reaching the Tri-Peak. Absolutely nothing was known about him, and combing the Central Plains to find him could easily provoke a reaction that no one could ever predict. Honestly, the only real solution left was to become stronger than him. And guess what? The heavens actually gave me the time to prepare. The energy dispersing poison vanishes as if it never even touched my body. Since not a single trace remains after the duel, Gingho must have used a clean version to hide the evidence. After all, having dared to poison the bloodline of the heavenly demon, leaving behind any proof would have spelled absolute disaster for him. Lost in these thoughts, I call the name of the single person I owe more to than anyone else in my life, Leon. A cheerful voice answers, and a young woman enters. She is so massive, her martial robes look ready to tear open. Calling her overweight didn't quite capture it. Obese is definitely closer to the truth. She is Leon, my loyal personal guard, and back then I never realized her massive size came from her unique martial arts, or rather, from me. The all-body petrification technique is a secret art passed to her alone that briefly turns her flesh to solid stone, with this immense bulk being its tragic side effect. Looking at her through the mirror, I ask how I looked, and she cheerfully replies that I am easily the most handsome man in the entire martial world. Her voice is so sweet and pleasant, I am sure she'd win any competition for the finest voice in the Central Plains. That's boring, I tell her, but she just smiles and says the question always has a fixed answer since I am the one paying her wages. Your voice isn't even the best thing about you, I think. You've got such a warm and incredibly bright heart, too. Catching my gaze in the reflection, she asks why I am staring at her like that. On that fateful day in my first life, I only survived because of Leon. She threw herself right into the path of Hwami's deadly sword energy. That attack was meant to end me. His energy tore right through her petrified body, but doing so nudged the strike just enough to narrowly miss my beating heart. Hwami never even bothered to check if I was dead, never dreaming his strike could miss. Her pure sacrifice combined with his sheer arrogance saved my life. She was fully prepared to die for my sake. And yet, back then, I treated her as nothing more than a simple guard. I took her presence for granted, the way people completely forget about the very air they breathe. Telling her she did great in the duel, I walk over, remembering the sweet child she once was. Gentle eyes, and a doll-like face that became so lovely whenever she smiled. The little girl everyone predicted would grow into the most beautiful woman alive. But then, one day, that gorgeous child suddenly started looking quite chubby. I never realized how much she wept after gaining too much weight for me to look at her. With the exact same eyes she wears today, that young child had promised back then that she would protect me. Her only crime was being born into the divine cult and raised to be a guard warrior. And the price she ended up paying was simply far too high. She sacrificed the face that would have made her the most beautiful woman alive. Yet she kept her promise by throwing her massive body right in front of that deadly sword energy. And because of her, I survived. You see, saving Leon alone makes this entire second chance completely worth it. Right then, I make a silent promise to myself that I will rid her of the awful side effects of that petrification technique once and for all. Then, out of nowhere, I tell her that we shouldn't become too close. When she asks why, I say that growing close to my guard is just giving her more reasons to die in my place, which is a pretty cowardly thing to do. She immediately calls it nonsense. She argues that, of course, it was natural to protect her young master, but there is no such thing as a natural sacrifice. I tell her she should always put herself first, then her family, and only after that the person she is assigned to guard. Without hesitating, she declares that is impossible, because to her, I come first, second is still me, and besides, she has no family of her own. I can't even begin to measure the depth of her incredible loyalty. She remarks that I am acting strange today, so I tell her if she wants to see something even weirder, she should follow me. As I stride out the door, I tell her we are going to go flip the dinner table right over. Walking straight to the kitchen, I gather every single worker inside, including the head chef, Lim. From the lineup, I single out the assistant cook who has worked here for 3 years. I demand to know why he put energy-dispersing poison in my food, causing the whole kitchen to freeze while he desperately denies it. One great benefit of returning to the past is that I don't need to read his heart. I already knew the truth. He is heavily buried in gambling debt. After burning through his parents' money and his friends' savings, he actually has the audacity to poison the food of the heavenly demon divine cult's bloodline for a price. I tell him he took those 3,000 yang and went straight back to the gambling tables, didn't he? He flinches, drops to his knees, and begs for his life. Gunho, I ask him, did he personally deliver that money directly to you? The very second he says yes, I take his head off with one single, clean strike. It is my first kill since regression, and I feel absolutely nothing. Killing him painlessly is the final act of mercy I can offer. After all, even in my first life, he met his end on this exact day. He is stabbed in a gambling den by an assassin Gupyong-ho sent to silence him. Poisoning food can never be forgiven. Forgiving them once only invites another attempt. So Chef Lim Suko, his face pale with dread, kneels down and takes all the blame, saying whatever happens in his kitchen is his sole responsibility. I help him up and ask him by his full name, Lim Suko, if some injustice in our cult made it my father's fault. He gasps, no, absolutely not. Then why does Lim Suko take this all on himself? I ask. I tell him to cut the useless talk and make chicken noodle soup for dinner. I am craving it, wondering how many decades it has been since I last tasted it. He points out I had it 2 days ago, but I tell him my sword is still dripping blood. He promises to make it delicious and serve it right away. As I walk out, Leon runs up, saying it is her fault as head of security. I ask her if everyone here is suffering from some responsibility sickness. I tell her to spread word that Gupyong Ho planned this, and I beheaded the poisoning cook. The Blood Heaven Blade Demon faction will deny it, she warns. Let them deny it, I tell her. Since too many eyes and ears here saw and heard everything, they deserve to wear that filthy reputation. So spread it until even the cult dogs are barking about energy dispersing poison. Following closely, she mentions carefully that I really do seem quite different today. She is the first to notice since she serves closest, adding that I am even cracking jokes now. I tell her I decided to live differently starting today. And that makes sense, right? People do not change slowly day by day. They change all at once when a major trigger hits. And since that is so rare, people assume others never change. Without letting her ask what my trigger was, I walk away. Later on, she stands completely astonished at the gear I laid out for our hunting trip. She asks if we really need all of this, and I tell her we do, since nobody in our cult has camped more than me. But I only say aloud that since I am going with my father, I must be fully prepared. She wishes me a wonderful time. I wonder if that will actually happen. I am confident in many things, but my relationship with my father is not one of them. And since I have now lived longer than my father's current age, I feel even less confident. You must make it happen, she tells me. And it will. I sleep horribly that night, dreaming I am still hunting those rare materials. They are never where they should be. And I wander aimlessly until Leon's voice asks if I am all right. I must have screamed in my sleep. It was a disgusting nightmare, I tell her. When she asks what it was about, I tell her to imagine starting over as the lowest-ranked martial artist alive. She begs me to just kill her instead. I sit up and look at the mirror on the wall, reminding myself a dream is just a dream. My youthful reflection stares back at me, and the sight immediately lifts my spirits. She says I seem tense, and I tell her I am about to spend the day with someone scarier than a tiger. In my past life, when things got unbearable, I used to imagine what I would do if I could just go back, and that thought alone gave me the strength to endure. Yet, in all those dreams, I never once pictured hunting with my father on the very second day of my return. We will find out if my gut instinct was actually right the second this hunt ends. With everything packed, I sling the heavy sack over my shoulder and walk toward the Heavenly Demon Pavilion where my father waits. There is absolutely no need to travel far to find our hunting ground. The mountains behind our cult are famous for being rugged, packed with defensive formations and deadly mechanisms. In this desolate expanse, only my father and I are present. Actually, make that 3 of us, since Hwa, my father's bodyguard, is following us from the shadows. I call him Uncle Hwa, the only bodyguard my father trusts without reservation, just like I trust Leon. I focus my chi and sweep the surroundings, but cannot catch a single trace of him. His stealth is top tier. Of course, we both died to Hwa Moogi on that day. The first thing my father asks is why I am carrying a massive pack nearly as big as my body. These are just things I might need over the next few days, I tell him. A few days, he scoffs. We are only staying for 1. Well, you never know, I tell him. You might enjoy hunting with me so much, you will want to stay even longer. His face makes no secret of how absurd he finds it as he tells me to dream on. Not even half an hour into his company, I realize my memories of him were completely distorted. I remembered him as a man of few words, but he actually talks more than I thought. He admits my match against Gupyong Ho was quite impressive, since the skills from my life before regression clearly showed through during that fight. Even without internal power, I see no reason to lie and tell him I was simply hiding my true skills. He agrees that it certainly looked that way. To lighten the mood, I joke that I am no hissing cat, but a beast keeping its claws hidden. He stops, looks back, and asks if you are a beast, why hide your claws? Ah, I reply, I guess I hadn't thought of it that way. So you are a cat, he says. But just as he turns away, he suddenly asks what stage I have reached in the soaring sword art. It is an elite technique passed down only through the heavenly demon bloodline, easily matching the high-tier skills of the demon supreme. Still, it is nothing compared to the legendary 9 Calamities demon art, reserved solely for the heavenly demon himself. Realizing I cannot fool him, I speak up. I mastered it, I say. Instantly, a sharp gust of wind shoots from his fingertip, grazing my cheek. If my instincts had not kicked in to make me dodge, that blast would have left a hole right through me. He asks in disbelief if I really mastered it. Rubbing my stinging cheek, I yell back that he actually launched a deadly attack while still doubting me. What if I did not dodge? I snap. He just shrugs. That would have been your price for lying. A scar on this handsome face, which looks exactly like yours, really would not suit me, I tell him. He just snorts and keeps walking. My past self would have been utterly terrified. I mean, what kind of father casually fires a deadly wind blade right at his own kid's face? He admits that mastering such an elite art at my age is actually impressive. Since I only mastered it in my 30s in my previous life, his shock makes perfect sense. I offer a quiet thank you. We climb in absolute silence for a while. The kind of quiet mountain trek that feels like an unsaid conversation between us. I finally break the silence, asking who taught him how to hunt. After a brief pause, he says his older brother did. Do I have an uncle? I ask. He died when he was around your age, my father says flatly. I killed him. Instead of faking some polite pity, I tell him he did the right thing. He stops and glares. Hey, if you had not, I wouldn't even be born, I say. He gives me a freezing stare before moving forward again. No matter how tough he is, family tragedy always leaves deep, invisible scars. The tougher a man acts on the outside, the deeper his hidden wounds truly go. My past life taught me how to bury bodies, but you can never easily bury the trauma of the heart. Speaking plainly is the only way he will open up. Back then, he admits there was simply no way to win the family succession without walking over his own brother's corpse. My reply is completely firm. He should not expect the same from me. Because what he could not achieve, I cannot either. But you can only say that when your brother is actually worth saving, and we both know how twisted and wicked my own brother is. You are pretty skilled at trash-talking him behind his back, my father notes. He definitely deserves it, I reply. Honestly, this is nothing compared to the evil things my brother will pull to secure his spot as heir. He is fighting on the rough frontier while I sit safe. My father speaks up. During that time, my uncle was active under their father's orders. He had not yet shown his true colors, and being genuinely capable, he had their father's trust way more than my father did, with everyone angling to align with him. He will never willingly surrender the throne, I point out. Believing I can take his crown while keeping him alive is just the peak of foolish arrogance. My father's silent gaze asks if I have always been this cold and calculating, and my sharp, determined eyes give him a clear yes. In my previous life, I never got married. Because of that, I never knew what a kid truly meant to a father, making me highly curious about what kind of existence I represent to him now. We keep climbing until he suddenly signals for silence, pointing deep into the trees and asking if I see it. I only see thick woods. He says he does, so I ask what is out there. Just dinner, he says. As I reach for the bow on my shoulder, he stops my eager hand. He asks how I plan to shoot something I cannot even see, commanding me to close my eyes and feel the area first. True martial masters read their foes by tracking tiny ripples in the air, but the only presence I can detect right now is my father's deep, quiet focus. And let me tell you, that silence is pure terror because underneath it lies an explosive force ready to shatter the world. Release a single fine thread of your energy now, he instructs softly. Think of your body as a spool, and let that energy drift out slowly without snapping it. In my past life, I never spun my energy into a thread this incredibly fine. Usually, I only unleash my power to completely crush a foe, but this training method is totally out of my league. Make it thinner, he commands. Do not let it snap. Right here, I discover exactly how far my sensory power can actually stretch. Push it further, he urges me. Keep going. Without his steady guidance, I would never have pushed my limits this far. Suddenly, my energy brushes against a physical presence. Did you find it? He asks. He detects my success instantly. It feels like a large tree, I tell him. Amazingly, I can clearly visualize the object in my mind without even knowing why. Now carefully scan the surrounding area, he tells me. Keeping my focus steady, I stretch my senses outward and lock onto a warm life force hiding underneath that tree. Is it a wild boar? I ask. When he stays quiet, I peek open one eye to find him staring at me in shock, so I quickly add that its hair feels coarse and its body is long. It is a boar, he confirms. Even then, I couldn't spot it with my eyes, but I had already sensed it deep in the forest. Even my father, who did it first, found it hard to believe I landed that incredibly distant shot on my very first try. This wasn't some basic hunting trick, it was a high-level secret art built for actual combat. I looked at him and said you were totally ready to laugh if I failed. Of course, he replied, you were supposed to fail. But I just smiled and said I'm your son. He muttered that he missed his first shot too. But when I reminded him that I possessed the heavenly martial body, his eyes flickered with a quiet, sudden shift. In my past life, that heavenly martial body only brought me bitter resentment. I hated that a man so obsessed with power completely ignored me, the actual vessel of that strength. I even used to wonder if he was just jealous of my talent. I was incredibly petty back then, but now, I finally get it. You don't deserve special treatment just because you were born with a heavenly martial body. You have to master that gift to actually become someone truly special. Only when the whole world expects greatness from you does that gift become a true heaven-sent blessing. Suddenly, he asks, "What are you doing?" Since he was planning to skip dinner, I fired an arrow straight toward the chi I sensed. Soon, a campfire was blazing in the dark, with fresh boar meat cooking over the flames. He looked at it and asked, "When did you learn to butcher?" I told him I learned from books, and he admitted I was pretty skilled for a reader. I laughed inside, thinking, "Father, I have butchered hundreds of wild boars." But I quickly changed the subject, explaining that the tiger pelt he was currently sitting on was actually a gift I brought for him. Hearing that, a very faint smirk appeared on his face. Most people look arrogant when they smirk, but my father somehow made it look incredibly natural. He asked if I was hunting to impress him and secure the succession. I told him straight up, "No, I know cheap tricks don't work on you, and I can take that spot entirely on my own." He said quite confident, "Aren't you?" And I replied, "Absolutely. My greedy, hot-tempered brother will surely do everything to ruin me." He told me to stop slandering my brother, then asked again why I wanted to join this hunt. I gave him 2 reasons. First, to learn and grow much stronger. And honestly, I think I accomplished that today. He asked what growing stronger meant to me, his intense gaze trying to see if I wanted his throne. I quickly explained that my goal wasn't to replace him as the heavenly demon, but to become the heir and master the clan's legendary martial arts. To him, both my brother and I probably looked way too young and inexperienced to lead. In my past life, it took him almost 10 years to officially name my brother as heir. I simply couldn't afford to wait that long. I had to show my full potential right now and master the 9 calamities demon art at lightning speed. To survive, I had to reach absolute greatness. After all, even my father, a 10-star master, eventually fell to Hwa Moogi, so I needed 12-star power. Sometimes I wish I could tell him the truth that I met someone I desperately wanted to kill, but was too weak to do it. I never want to feel that utter helplessness again. His face remained totally expressionless. When he asked for the second reason, I admitted I just wanted some quiet time with you. I asked if this was a first for us, but his sneer only deepened as he called it cheap sentiment. He muttered that cheap feelings are perfect for dying. I replied, "How can anything be cheap when it involves the greatest master in the world?" He said, "Only if I get the greatest liquor." I smiled and said yes. I promised to keep my mouth shut for 1 full hour. Looking straight at him, I smiled. It was probably the first real smile I ever showed him, but he just turned his head away coldly. Growing up, I had no warm memories of him. Frightening moments never turn into cozy, nostalgic feelings. In this timeline, I won't let things stay so cold and empty, but he shouldn't get the wrong idea. This isn't for his sake. It's entirely for mine. Waking up early, I packed my gear and suggested we head back, but he stopped me and asked where I thought I was going. He grunted, "You came all this way to hunt with the heavenly demon, so we should at least bring home a tiger." It wasn't about the tiger. It was his way of saying he actually enjoyed our time. I smiled and said that's a relief. When he asked why, I told him I had already prepared a full plan for our second day together. He told me to stop talking nonsense and just lead. We ventured deeper into the dark forest, and after a long walk, he suddenly told me to close my eyes again. He said the target was 100 jang to our right, farther than before, and told me to feel the wind. Wait, channel energy into the wind? That was a concept I had literally never heard of in my entire life. No master, no manual had ever spoken of such a technique. A surge of pure excitement rushed through me as he commanded first, "Release your energy." I carefully let my power flow, just like I did when tracking the boar. But he scoffed, "If you move that slow, it's nothing but a petty trick. In a real fight, you must push your energy all the way to the target at absolute lightning speed." But trying to fuse my energy with the wind was incredibly hard. I could feel both forces clearly, but how on earth was I supposed to combine them, especially since the wind he meant wasn't some sudden gust, but the constant flow of air around us. So I had to find the currents running right in front of me and pour my energy into them. I fumbled around for a long time. My father said nothing. He just stood there with his hands behind his back, gazing at the distant mountains. Why do people see a whole life in a man's back? Looking at his, I should have felt the strength of an absolute powerhouse. Yet all I felt was loneliness and desolation. "Not bad," he said. Right at that moment, The energy I'd been sending out suddenly cut off 100 jang to our right. I stared blankly at his back, wondering when it had reached so far. I'd channeled it into the wind without even realizing. Since I'd gained massive insight from my previous life, what should have been incredibly difficult came to me completely effortlessly. I did it without realizing, I said. And he stared at me, looking pretty agitated. Because whether it was luck or an accident, this shouldn't happen so easily. No matter, he said. That bastard has run off anyway. As the sun began to set, we came upon the target we'd missed. That's the bastard from before, he said. I had no idea. But it must be true if he said so. I still couldn't see him. And it amazed me how my father could pinpoint the size and aura of something from so far away. He's 150 jang away, he said. Use the wind. Trying once more, it wasn't too hard since I'd succeeded so easily before. It was just a matter of the mind. I tried different ways, then realized the real problem. I'd only been trying to force my energy onto the wind, focusing too much on the act of placing it there. So, instead of forcing it, my energy rode along with the wind. Just like walking beside a friend, mingling together as separate forces. My energy and the wind began to intertwine, coiling around each other like two soaring dragons. Now here's the real trick. Carrying energy in the wind wasn't like riding a horse. You have to literally merge with it. Swept forward, my energy swiftly reached 150 jang. The instant I confirmed what it was, a massive tiger's roar erupted from afar. I flinched, snapping my connection. It really was a tiger, I told my father. I was startled by the tiger, but I absolutely shocked my father. He definitely hadn't expected me to master his lesson this fast. Father, this is only the beginning, I thought. I'd love to just stroll by a peaceful lake with you, but we have to ride the rapids and plunge down the waterfall. Because the enemy we face might be out there right now, braving a massive typhoon alone in the middle of a distant sea. Father, send me to that sea. Do not neglect your training, and keep sending out your energy. The more you expand your sensory threads, the longer you'll live, he said. I'll remember that, I replied. I'll weave even more than you, Father. You must succeed this time, he said. Now, close your eyes and feel my energy. I sent mine out, and just like before, I felt his presence slowly, almost hesitantly, examining the energy spread all around him. One strand at a time, my mouth slowly fell open. Father, what is this? I asked. He stood right in the center of a massive spider web. Dozens of threads stretched in every direction. Honestly, it was so massive I couldn't even begin to follow them. If anyone tried to sneak up on him, they'd have to bypass that web. With its insane size and complexity, that was completely impossible. Yet that monster Hwa Moogi defeated my father at this peak level. How? Even though I hated it, I couldn't help but be amazed by him again. That night, I told my father I had a little surprise, pulling his absolute favorite liquor right out of my pouch. I filled a clean cup and offered it. Good, he said. I lied and told him it was too strong for me, when in truth, I loved drinking. Having made a habit of drinking whenever I struggled to find materials for my techniques, I had zero intention of bragging here, so I called it strong. But drink all night, and he'd definitely collapse first. No true warrior complains about strong liquor, he said. Better a poison in the heart than in the cup, I replied. Poison in the heart, he asked with a sneer. Could you actually kill me to save yourself? After a brief pause, I told him no. How could a child ever kill their own parent? Honestly, that was a lie too. Given a good enough reason, I could easily kill him. Today was literally our first real conversation, so how could his life be more precious than mine? Then, I asked if he could kill me. If you even have to ask that question, he said, then you should never speak of poison in the heart. I felt the truth in his cold eyes. He could kill me without a moment's hesitation. Guess I should definitely learn to handle my liquor then, I said. And as I drank, he watched my grimace with a strange look. Later that night, I sat alone, practicing the chi projection he'd taught me. This is actually pretty fun. I could now send my chi riding the wind incredibly far, my energy roaming the pitch-black dark. There's a tree, and right below it, a rock. Even the tiny movements of insects. The more I trained, the faster my chi moved, until it suddenly hit something unfamiliar and stopped dead. What is that? I pulled my energy back and sent it through once more, but the strange aura was gone. Staring at the empty spot, I could sense absolutely nothing. Something was definitely lingering in the dark. Then I noticed my father watching me. Why are you staring over there? He asked. I told him I felt something but could not be sure. He gave me a startled look, then turned away and muttered that we should sleep. I lay down, the campfire crackling between us. Then it hit me who. It had to be Uncle Hwai, my father's shadow bodyguard. When I tried focusing on his presence again, he had already slipped away. Realizing this sent a massive thrill through me because just 2 days ago, detecting his presence would have been completely impossible. Sure, Uncle Hui was not hiding with his full effort, but just picking up his basic stealth was a major step forward. If I kept training until I could shoot out dozens of sensory strands at once like my father, no stealth could ever hide from me. No active searching required, I would just perceive everything around me. But that night, maybe because I drank too clumsily, sleep refused to come. Whenever I grew exhausted searching for the secret technique scrolls, I used to drink and gaze up at the silent stars. Those very stars that witnessed my loneliness still shone unchanged tonight. My father seemed wide awake too, probably stunned by how fast I was absorbing his lessons. Like paper drinking water, I looked up. "Father, whom do you trust most?" I didn't really expect him to answer, but check this out, he actually asked why I wanted to know about that day of ruin. The day Hwa Moogi destroyed the Heavenly Demon Pavilion, a sanctuary heavily guarded by 3 Keeman formations, 6 mechanical arrays, and elite warriors. All 8 demon supremes and their legions stood guard in every direction, absolute shields for the heavenly demon. To the north stood the Northern Heaven Sword family, under the 1/Sword Supreme. South of us lay the Southern Heaven's Blade family, under the Blood Heaven Blade Demon. The Eastern Fist faction defended the East under the undefeated Fist Demon, while the Western Illusion formation held the West under the Soul-Stealing Demon. Northeast, the faceless swordsmen of the Evil Smiling Demon stood ready, while the Great Drunken Demon's drunkards held the Southeast. Southwest belonged to the Poison Fangs of the Poison King, and Northwest to the Demonic Buddha's Mad Monks. Back then, I assumed the enemy had smashed their way in from the outside, but I later discovered those outer defenses were never breached. It meant someone from the 8 Demon Supremes personally ushered Hwa Moogi straight into the inner sanctum of the pavilion. There could have been a single traitor or even several, and though their identity was never uncovered, it made no difference because I marked all 8 of them as rats. After my father fell, they chose to lock the gates instead of seeking vengeance. Not one stepped forward. If even one had stood up, this betrayal would not sting so badly. Watching Hwa Moogi stand over the heavenly demon's corpse with such insane power, none of you dared to move, so you should also understand. When I bleed you dry in the future, treating you as nothing but disposable chess pieces, you must accept it. That is only fair, right? I muttered aloud that once I become the next heavenly demon, I will seize total control of those 8 and tighten their leashes. What? He leapt up. The sheer force made the grass stand completely on end. I quickly rose. Why? He demanded. Because they are further away than you think, father. You might track a tiger hiding 100 jang away, but you and I know how impossible it is to read the hearts of those laughing right in front of your face. Since I could not say that outright, I offered another excuse that severe corruption was eating away at their ranks. Not just the main culprits, but everyone riding their coattails. He listened in dead silence, so I kept going. Sure, we have to respect their power to keep things running smoothly, but these old fools have completely crossed the line. Is it not time to properly enforce some discipline? He said absolutely nothing, but his silence told me everything I needed to know. He agreed with me. He definitely held grudges against those 8, or he would have brutally whipped me for even suggesting we discipline them. Blind greed. It only gets your legs torn off and your stomach ripped wide open. He warned me about my future, but I quietly told him that would never happen to me. I will tread carefully and eat slowly. He did not dismiss it as crazy talk. He recognized my ambition, aligning his unsheathed blade with my own. Do not worry, father. I know those monsters better than anyone, having spent ages seeking the ultimate ingredient, the legendary heavenly demon spirit. And because my ultimate goal lay far down the road, I kept tracking every single detail about those 8. How they lived, how they died. I will set every single one of them straight. So the cold night passed, my thoughts as endless as the shining stars. Once back from the hunt, I immediately headed to the training grounds to practice those hidden arts, focusing on pouring my chi into the wind and releasing multiple sensory threads simultaneously. A proper meal? A total waste of time. I chewed dry jerky and replaced sleep with deep cultivation, and the more I practiced, the more I understood. This technique was absolutely crucial. Sensing an ambush is like getting an extra life. My past taught me well, if I do not walk today, I will have to run tomorrow. Following days of relentless practice, I finally stepped out, now able to freely channel my inner energy into 3 or even 4 distinct strands of wind. Leon stood waiting right at the entrance, telling me to rest and eat. When asked why she neglected her other duties, she insisted her only job was protecting me. She had been guarding that door the entire time. I knew some serious shock therapy was needed to change this stubborn girl's mind. What if someone suddenly ambushed me? She immediately said she would throw herself in front of the blade. But if she dies taking a blow meant for me, I asked her, how does she think that makes me feel? Did she expect me to dance in celebration on the training ground? She doubted I would, but insisted it beat me dying. Besides, I am no dancer. Throwing your life away like that is a purely selfish sacrifice, only considering your own feelings. It felt harsh, calling her noble spirit selfish. But this harsh therapy was absolutely necessary, even if it did not always work. Leon, I asked, do you genuinely want to protect me? When she said yes, I gave her a simple order: start training in martial arts. When the moment comes to truly defend me, do not just block the incoming blow, kill the enemy outright. Becoming stronger was the only way she could secure her own happiness. Leon nodded in silent agreement. No jokes this time. Suddenly, a voice shouted from afar, "Hey, fatso." I turned to see 3 disciples of the Bloodheaven Blade Demon approaching, asking if their precious young master was still hiding inside. From the looks of it, they had dropped by several times during my training. Calling her fatso? These fools are begging to get wrecked. They couldn't even see me hidden behind Leon. I quietly asked how many times she had dealt with this. She shook it off, insisting she was just fine. If this is nothing, I asked, then what actually qualifies as something? Do we need our family completely wiped out before we make it a big deal? She insisted she was fine. Leon was just extremely worried that I might snap and cause a scene. She was anxious about potential trouble, whether they hurt me or I hurt them. I told Leon not to worry, because I would not ruin my life over this. Most people protect their own. As they drew close, Leon quickly warned me that these bastards did not have good intentions. She suggested we should avoid them. I agreed, of course, I should avoid things like hornets or stray dogs, avoid dog filth, avoid my father's wrath, but not these guys. By then, the 3 stood directly before me. Oh, the punk who mocked Leon sneered the noble young master is here too. It was Yang Po, the second disciple of the Bloodheaven Blade Demon. He was trash, completely different from the poison user Gu Pyungho, infamous for looking down on people and psychologically breaking them. I glanced over at the handsome disciple standing with him. He was the youngest, known for his kindness, who in my past life eventually committed suicide because of Yang Po's relentless torment. Even now, he looked miserable, clearly dragged here against his will. The other guy was the 4th disciple whose name I forgot, who also left a terrible impression. Disrespecting my guard is the same as disrespecting me, I told Yang Po. Sorry, he sneered. I did not see the young master with her blocking the way. You really need to grow a bit taller. This brainless fool could not even follow a basic conversation. That he acted this arrogant was entirely my father's fault. Ever since the announcement that literally anyone in the cult could become the next successor, my special status as the heavenly demon's son had vanished. Now, they wanted to use this chance to prove they were not inferior to the cult leader's actual bloodline. I turned to Leon, noting they visited several times, and remarked that senior brother Gu Pyungho can no longer practice martial arts. Leon asked, so what? So I joked about nursing him. I told her to get a rag to wipe his sweat, then looked at Yang Po. Do I look like I am joking? I asked him. We are not close enough to have serious conversations. He got completely furious, thinking I ignored him. Honestly, it is hilarious watching a brutal bully whine like a baby over some light teasing. Since you crippled someone, he snarled, you must take responsibility and apologize officially. I could easily guess his true motive. The Bloodheaven Blade Demon had not named a top disciple yet, so his followers scrambled to kiss up to him however they could. Yang Po wanted to score easy points by forcing an official apology out of me, saving his master's face in the process. Do you genuinely think your master will choose you as his top disciple for this? I asked. He claimed he wanted justice for his senior brother. He argued that while his senior's attack was extreme, I had intentionally crushed his arm. He thought he made a good point, but it was useless. So you are saying my father and the Demon Supremes are wrong? Since my father acknowledged my victory and granted my wish while your master kept quiet, that means both the leader and your master cannot tell right from wrong. His face drained of color as he stammered, telling me to stop speaking nonsense. That means the leader and your master are just as blind to right and wrong as you are. His face went dead pale, stammering that it was a lie, and telling me to stop spouting such absolute nonsense. How could this guy completely overpower me with just words? He looked back at his senior brothers. They were just as flustered, knowing any wrong move could get them accused of criticizing the heavenly demon. Yang Po reluctantly backed down, saying he would leave it for today, but I told him to wait. I demanded an apology for his rude comments to my subordinate, and only then did their gaze shift to Leon, whom they had completely ignored. Leon wished it would just end here and claimed she was fine, but I told her I absolutely was not. For running his mouth like that, I demanded he kneel and apologize even if he did not mean it. The rumor of his humiliation had to spread. He asked if I seriously wanted him to kneel to that pig woman, snapping that he would rather die than do it. That was the exact answer I wanted. So I called him manly for choosing death and drew my sword to grant his wish. If you just walk away like this, I warned him, word will get back to the cult that the second disciple of the Blood Heaven Blade Demon fled from me, leaving him labeled a coward for life. He came here solely to earn his master's favor, not to be branded a coward forever. Kneel and apologize, I said, or fight me. Why was I pushing so hard? He asked, and I told him he could always try gathering his group for revenge later. I can handle all of that, but why did you have to bully my subordinate and insult her weight when you never even bought her a meal? Instead of reflecting, he just looked even more annoyed, asking if I really planned to kill him over some fat girl. Confirming his fears, his eyes narrowed fiercely as he snarled and lunged forward. I told him my subordinate is worth 1,000 times more than him, and before I could even finish, Yangpo drew his blade. Talk about a massive trigger. The fourth disciple cried out for him to stop, but Yangpo was already past the point of no return. He knew he could not kill the cult leader's child, but he confidently vowed to take my arm to avenge his senior brother. I did not remember exactly, but my combat skills back then were pretty much equal to the Blade Demon disciples. This was all because of my brother, who had constantly tormented and restrained me since childhood. As the holder of the heavenly martial body, I could not even develop properly. I mocked him, calling it a shame he lacked energy, dispersing poison. He told me not to be ridiculous, claiming he was far different from senior brother Gu before launching a heavy strike that pushed me back. In my past life, I had learned the hard way that a warrior's skill and their actual character rarely ever match, and Yangpo was no exception, pulling off some seriously impressive saber work despite his completely garbage personality. He was skilled enough to go toe-to-toe with the me of the past. But to the current me, he was just another one-second opponent. To keep my true strength hidden, I suppressed my power and matched his exact pace. Every time he pressed his attack, his companions cheered while Leon let out a worried cry. Honestly, she would have jumped in to help if this were not an official duel. After 20 exchanges, I decided to make my move. I was done matching his rhythm. Now, it was time to unleash the true essence of the soaring sword art. Moving like a willow leaf swaying in the breeze, my blade flowed with absolute ease. Blood sprayed everywhere as my blade pierced clean through his mouth and burst right out the back of his head. Dead silence fell, with only the sound of blood dripping from my sword. I stared into his fading eyes and told him that his big mouth was the sole reason he was dying. That mouth insulted my subordinate and refused to apologize. He deserved this. His trash talk killed his senior brother and would have gotten others killed too. This was his end. As I pulled my sword back, Yangpo coughed up blood and collapsed, his saber clattering uselessly. Rushing to his side, his companions cried out for their senior brother, but they only found a cold corpse and stood in sheer shock. They never expected me to actually end him, and Leon was just as stunned, staring at me in disbelief. The fourth disciple angrily demanded to know why I killed him. He called me cruel, so I asked what he expected, and he warned me about the upcoming consequences. I coldly noted that his mouth was starting to look just like his dead senior brother's. Instantly remembering how his friend just died, he shut up like a clam. The truth had to be reported exactly as it happened, because if they added even a single lie, I would pay them a personal visit at night. They quickly carried Yangpo's body away, and right then, I noticed the youngest disciple looking relieved. How desperate must this kid have been to be unable to hide his sheer joy over his companion's death. Normally, Yangpo would have tormented and killed him, but now he gets to live. The poison mixer Lemuko died exactly as destined, but this youngest disciple who was meant to perish survived. It seems fate remains rigid, yet somehow changes anyway. I silently wished him luck, hoping he would endure and eventually become the greatest disciple of the Blade Demon. Meanwhile, Leon stared at me with despair, asking if she had not already warned me that everyone must fend for themselves. I told her to relax, that it wasn't because of her. But deep down, it was, wasn't it? She frowned and asked why I caused such a massive incident then. What big incident? I asked. I simply ended someone who completely deserved to die. She warned me that the Blood Heaven Blade Demon Elder wouldn't let this slide, but I knew better getting involved would do him no good. At the end of the day, his disciple insulted my guard and died simply because he refused to offer an apology that would have settled everything. So, what does that elder actually gain by stepping in? He'd only face backlash for raising a terrible disciple. She argued his pride might be wounded, but the Blood Heaven Blade Demon Elder doesn't possess that kind of foolish pride. Your handsome young master knows everything, I told her. Seeing my confidence, she finally relaxed a little, and this is where his real genius plan shows. Honestly, putting Yangpo down actually helps me, I explained. It scores another point toward becoming the successor. First, I shattered Gupuno in our duel, and now I've ended Yangpo. Every single eye in the cult is locked on me. I made a massive impact on my father during the hunt, and I had to keep this momentum going. Leon, insulting you is the same as insulting me, so never tell them it's okay. She sighed, admitting she was being short-sighted. We have much bigger things to worry about, I told her. Besides, why would the owner of some trash get mad that I cleaned it up? Trivial worries like that stop right now. Passion flashed in Leon's eyes as she realized I had truly changed, and that's why you need to change too, I said. The massive shifts in me lately were bound to push her forward as well. She nodded, promising to become stronger. But of course, that's far easier said than done. She'll face endless struggles, doubts, and heavy obstacles after all. Transforming your entire life is never easy. Even my own smooth transformation only happened because of what I endured in my past life. Then she whispered, "Young master, thank you." She was genuinely happy that I stood up for her. I teased her to stay grateful, telling her to never forget today. She smiled, not a simple polite curve, but a massive, beaming grin that scrunched up her eyes and cheeks. Yeah, keep smiling like that. Now that I've regressed, I'll protect you so you can always smile like that. Meanwhile, the rumors of me killing the elder's disciple spread like wildfire. As those rumors spread, Leon's anxiety spiked with them. It is pure chaos, she told me. Everyone is gossiping about you and Yangpo, and they keep bringing me up too. Since she triggered the clash, the gossip was inevitable. But isn't fame great? I laughed. We martial artists do crazy things just to get noticed. I really hate it, she grumbled. You're only going to get way more famous later, so what are you going to do then? I asked. She let out a soft sigh, but her face wasn't gloomy. Deep inside this chaos, a very positive change was taking root. I'm worried because the Blood Heaven Blade Demon supposedly values his honor, she admitted. I just hope he drops it. Who on earth told you he cares about honor? I asked. She blinked, questioning if a proud master would really ignore his disciples' crimes. Maybe he just didn't know, she suggested. But I countered that such a guess severely underestimated how incredibly thorough he actually is. You always talk like you know him inside out, she noted. I smiled, explaining that as the heavenly demon's son, I naturally kept tabs on the demon lords. It's my job to know, I said. She stared, wide-eyed. She was probably wondering how I gathered all this secret info. Then she asked why he let his disciples run wild. I knew the real, dark truth, but it wasn't something she was ready to hear. Instead, I gave an answer she could swallow. Because it's convenient, I explained. She was confused, so I told her it's far easier to manipulate greedy, selfish tools than good ones. Think about how cold-blooded this is. He refuses to name a successor, keeping his disciples locked in a brutal competition so he can treat them as disposable pawns. Just wait. Yangpo's spot will be filled in a few days. That demon is a terrifying man, she said. Honestly, I'm more creeped out by his desperate disciples, I replied. They blindly rush to their deaths knowing how cruel their master is. I'm so glad I serve you, she smiled. Well, obviously, there's no comparison. I asked Leon if she'd like to grab a drink with me. Seeing her look so shocked, I chuckled. She stammered that it wasn't just a rare occasion, it was literally the first time ever. I had never shared a drink with her. What drove you to take a deadly blow for me back then? No matter. Let's head out, I smiled. We're drinking until we drop today. I brought her to Maga Village, the bustling city outside our cult, and headed straight for its wealthiest tavern. This is a historic day, I laughed. Let's drink at a truly fine place. She quietly suggested a small, rundown spot, since all these crowds made her anxious. Hearing that, I requested a quiet, private VIP room. So, how's your alcohol tolerance? I teased. Not great, she muttered. Well, let's test it. Don't worry. If you pass out, I'll carry you. But young master, I'm pretty heavy, she warned. I laughed, showing off my arm. That's literally half the size of mine, she giggled. Only because I'm not flexing yet. Since it was our very first time drinking together, I ordered a massive feast. She was amazed, saying she had never tasted anything like this. I told her to eat up and order whatever she liked after all. She was always busy guarding me on an empty stomach. I told her to start eating better, but she just laughed, gesturing to her size and saying cheap snacks were fine. Actually, skipping meals makes you gain more. I told her the more she cared about food, the slimmer she would stay. True weight loss takes a real gourmet. But secretly, I knew the harsh truth starving herself would never work, because her heavy frame had absolutely nothing to do with normal food. And deep down, she knew it too. She talked casually like I did not get the dark side effects. Even though she easily could have cracked a bitter joke about them, Even though she grew up way too fast, she still kept her gentle heart. "Teach me your secret," she whispered, staring intently not about cooking, but how someone can transform so completely. I gave a soft smile and asked if she wanted that change for herself. "Not really," she muttered, slamming back her drink. But honestly, who would not want to? For her, carrying the painful memory of her past self only grew heavier during the hard times. "If you return to who you really are," I said, "you won't need any secrets. The entire world will bow to you." She quietly took the glass I offered, then asked what my plan was regarding the sex successor. It was clear she saw real potential in me. "Flattery is my only survival strategy here," I joked, raising my glass. She burst out laughing, clinking her drink to mine, and warning me to melt the cult leader's icy heart. "You know how some people claim they can't drink, but then outdrink everyone? Yeah, she was one of those, and I paid the price. I had to carry her deadweight body back while she kept yelling from my shoulders that she would protect me no matter what. I told her I was fine, but hearing her babble actually made me sweat. "You better worry," she slurred. "You absolutely should, but do not worry. I have got your back." Just then, a nearby window slammed open, and some angry guy yelled at the loud idiot to shut up. I looked at the guy leaning out his window and asked him to let it slide just this once. "Who are you?" he demanded. "I am the young master of the heavenly demon divine cult," I stated calmly. Instant regret hit him immediately. "My deepest apologies, young master," he squeaked, slamming the shutters shut instantly. Meanwhile, Leon was totally passed out on my shoulders. "Sorry for keeping you out so late," I whispered. Back at my quarters, I tucked her into bed, stepped back out to stretch my legs in the quiet yard, and stared up at the moon. In my past life, the destruction of my cult left me completely broken. It was a suffocating despair, and my only reason to keep breathing was to chase the miracle of turning back time. What if I had never met Seojin or learned the Great Regression technique? I probably would have ended it all. Or worse, gone on a suicide mission against Hwa Moogi, only to be slaughtered by his guards before even seeing his face. I would be dead. Simple as that. Drowning in those dark thoughts, a sudden flash of silver caught the moonlight. I slowly turned my head, only to find a massive blade hovering inches from my throat. My reflection stared back from the massive steel. The blade tilted, and its owner stepped forward. A weathered, skeletal hand gripped the hilt, covered in deep wrinkles from brutal years of combat. Cold, razor-sharp eyes locked onto me through the shadows. And get this, it was the Bloodheaven Blade Demon himself. I was completely shocked he'd track me down so fast. The steel pressed to my throat was his signature weapon, the Heaven-Extinguishing Saber. Easily ranked as one of the 10 legendary weapons of the martial world, they call it the Weapon Destroyer because it instantly shatters any blade it touches, and right now, its terrifying demonic aura is suffocating the entire yard. The icy pressure literally made every single hair on my body stand up. If he swung that blade, could I even dodge? Honestly, I did not know. No matter how deep my future knowledge was, my current internal energy was still pathetic. Right when the pressure became absolutely unbearable, the murderous cold vanished. The Bloodheaven Blade Demon gave a faint grin and nudged my ribs with his hilt. He casually asked why I did it, why I murdered his disciple. One second he was a lethal assassin, and the next, he acted like some friendly neighborhood grandpa. "Because he was acting like an idiot," I replied. He locked eyes with me, his heavy gaze feeling intensely like my father's, yet somehow totally different. While my father's eyes were always a mystery, his were crystal clear, radiating a fierce, blazing hostility. "What kind of fool," he mused, "starts a fight with the boss's youngest son, a child so precious his father would shield him at all costs?" Suddenly, the heavy blade resting on his knee flashed upward, pressing right back against my jugular. "Maybe I should chop this pretty head off and see if it hurts your father," he sneered. His terrifying aura made it clear he meant every word. He sounded like he was joking, but he absolutely wasn't. "I don't think my head would fit in my father's narrowed eyes," I replied flatly. As I slowly took a step back, the suffocating energy vanished back into his scabbard. It is pretty crazy how he controls that much raw power with such a skinny body. Then, he draws a long line on the ground between us with the Heaven-Extinguishing Saber, leaving a short vertical mark at the left end. He says everything from here to here belongs to the young master, and everything else is mine. A line dividing us 9-1. 9 parts for him, 1 for me. That is just how much the cult leader cherishes me. I use my finger to draw a new line at about 1/3. I look at him and say, "Even if I am his son, this side is mine and that side belongs to you, elder." Now it is 7-3. He grins mischievously and asks if we should test that theory. Will the leader kill or spare him for taking my head? He asks if I am underestimating the heavenly demon's love. Repeating my own words, he jokes about testing it as his saber slides toward me. I press my palm against the flat of the blade, stopping it right before my neck, feeling its freezing edge. No matter his bright smile, this coldness is his true essence, and forgetting it means death. No need to test it, I say. There are 2 sons, but only one elder. He smirks, saying this young master is not quite as foolish as his disciple. If your disciple resembled you, I reply, he would still be alive. He pats my shoulder twice, saying he has lived with misfortune his whole life, so we should avoid seeing each other. With that, he vanishes into the pitch-black night. After he leaves, I check my side and find a bruise right where he poked. His playful shoulder pats actually felt like a string of heavy blows. Damn that old bastard. Threatening to take my head twice means he truly meant it. He acts impulsive, but he is constantly calculating, and even his wildest whims are planned. That makes him an incredibly tough opponent, as understanding him does not mean you can beat him. So, why did he come looking for me? Just like I told Leon, he does not care about reputation. He came because my performance in the arena caught his eye, and my request for a hunt sounded completely different to him. Plus, because I killed his disciple, he wanted to test me, to see if I taste sweet or bitter. To me, he is incredibly spicy, a single taste that sets me ablaze. And get this, was my first opponent really the Bloodheaven Blade Demon? Maybe so. Perhaps my path simply caught the attention of the heavens. The very next day, Leon comes to me totally flustered, asking how she got back. Her cheeks turn bright red when I joke that she carried me. Actually, I carried her. She asks if she was heavy and apologizes. I tell her it would be a lie to say she was light, but not heavy enough to apologize for. Look at these strong arms. After some teasing, she bows her head and thanks me. As she turns to leave, she asks for forgiveness in case she said anything wrong. Since she genuinely does not remember a thing, there is no need to worry, as she did absolutely nothing wrong. But if she does next time, she should use that pardon. I hold out my hand, and as her large hand grips mine, I tell her that it is officially issued. She asks why not give her 10 since she will follow me for life. I say no, just 1, so use it wisely. Grinning so wide her eyes completely vanish, she happily agrees to my terms. But honestly, if anyone here needs a pardon, it is me. Perhaps she should grant me 50 pardons instead. Later that night, I sit alone, practicing my chi emission. While scanning 3 directions at the exact same time, I suddenly sense a strange presence to my left. Lately, I have been really enjoying reading people through their chi, scanning them head to toe to figure out their height, their weapon of choice, and their martial arts realm. But just as I start scanning this target, they quickly slip away. Thinking it is just a coincidence, I focus my chi again, but they immediately dodge to the completely opposite side. Are they actively dodging on purpose? This thin, extremely subtle chi of mine is something they should not even be able to detect, yet they keep dodging as if they actually feel it. You have to wonder who on earth is this? Driven by pure curiosity, I keep releasing my chi and step outside, practicing while on the move, which takes far more mental focus than just staying completely still. But in real combat, you must emit chi while moving. I feel them pulling back and give chase, almost catching up but never quite making it, until I reach the inner courtyard pavilion. The second I see who is standing there, I breathe a huge sigh of relief. My father was the one luring me here this entire time. I tell him I knew it, admitting I was worried someone else had picked up my chi. He scoffed, saying even the sleeping dog under the wall would notice it, joking that dogs have great instincts. I ask what actually brings him to my quarters at this hour. He claims he was just passing by, though he clearly came for me. I tease him, saying it is a total coincidence. It seems we are destined to be connected, I say. He tells me to stop the nonsense, so I quiet down and look up at the night sky with him. After a quiet moment, I ask when he will choose his successor. In 100 years, he replies, as we are all far from ready. Make it 100 days, I tell him, because I am ready. He retorts that if that were true, the Bloodheaven Blade Demon would not have come seeking me. How did you know? I asked, since our meeting was strictly private. Yet he somehow knew, meaning he was watching my every move, and he even realized I had been hit by the energy dispersing poison. Right after meeting you, my father explained, the terrifying Bloodheaven Blade Demon came directly to see me, so I immediately asked what he said. He wanted me to punish you, my father replied, leaving me completely shocked that the Bloodheaven Blade Demon actually demanded my punishment. It was truly baffling, and my father noted that the elder is not the type to make such demands just because his disciple had passed away. Why did he do it? I asked, pretending not to know his real intent. He wanted to test the bond between my father and me, seeing if my father would actually punish me and how. He wanted to see if I consider you my successor, my father said, so I have decided to punish you. I argued that the disciple deserved to die, but he replied that a reason can easily be made, so I drew my sword and etched a long line on the dirt. I marked a spot about 10 steps away, and told him the Bloodheaven Blade Demon said this distance represented how much my father valued him. Was this his excuse? Just watch his reaction. Instead of answering, my father brought up our talk at the hunting ground, asking if I remembered who he trusted most among the demon supremes. I said yes, and then he gave his ultimate answer, declaring that he trusts absolutely no one, proving the Bloodheaven Blade Demon's line was completely wrong. Which side are you on, he asked. Do you trust people? I said it depends. How can you tell what they are really like, he asked, and I replied that you find out as you spend time with them. He called that a foolish thought, warning me that the human heart is something we can never truly know. No matter how honest they seem beside you, never think you truly know them. I suddenly thought of Leon, whom I believed I knew so well, yet kept seeing new sides to. So I told him I would keep that in mind. He asked if we needed to tighten our cult's discipline, and when I agreed, he told me to forget that nonsense about erasing corruption. Speak honestly, he said. Can I really? I asked. He just replied, have you ever lied to me? I said no, but warned him my answer might seem rude. He told me to speak, so I declared that we had somehow lost our demonic path. A subtle twitch passed under his eyes, proving this was definitely not the kind of thing to say right in front of him. He asked what I thought the demonic path was, and after a brief pause, I replied that it is our cult's sacred duty to strike down absolute evil. That was clearly an unexpected answer, because he turned to look at me with wide, completely shocked eyes. Striking down absolute evil, he repeated slowly, so I took a deep breath and explained that our true counterpart is definitely not the Orthodox sect. He asked what it was then, and I calmly answered absolute evil, knowing my father would not easily accept what I was about to say next. There exists a dark evil in this world so cowardly and dreadful that normal humans simply cannot bear it. An absolute evil so vile that even demons would click their tongues and turn away. The justice and unity the Orthodox sect values might subdue minor threats, but they cannot handle this absolute evil. Because the Orthodox sect keeps forgiveness at its core, always trying to protect and cherish every human life, how can they possibly fight an evil that has abandoned its humanity to rampage madly? My father stared, completely locked onto my words for the first time. Maybe he silently agreed, because let's be honest, we were the ones feared as evil. But I silently promised him that the heavenly demon divine cult in this life would never be that ultimate villain, and I will personally make sure of it. I continued, stating our sole purpose must be becoming the only force in this martial world that can destroy cowardly, malicious threats even more brutally, sometimes wearing the mask of good, and other times of pure evil. When that absolute great evil they cannot handle kneels before us trembling, then it is our true demonic path established, forcing the martial world to bow and beg our cult for help with their unsolvable crises, because only the heavenly demon divine cult can truly save them all. I was completely certain my father had never heard such ideas, thoughts not learned from within our cult but from my own lifetime of wandering. If we do not properly establish our demonic path right now, I told him, our cult will not survive much longer. To survive, we have to start by punishing ourselves. And hearing this, my emotionless father could not hide his sheer shock. He is the kind of man who would literally throw a punch at your face just to check if you are lying. Yet he showed no reaction. He was lost in deep thought over my words. And even though I had technically lived a much longer life than he had, I could not guess his mind. But I knew one thing for sure. Although only a few days had passed since my regression, both my father and I were already changing our destinies, turning toward a brand new future. He finally broke the heavy silence, asking if I had any more arrogance left to show. No, not today, I said, scratching my head with an awkward grin. He sighed, saying he now understood why the Bloodheaven Blade Demon wanted me punished. When I asked why, my father revealed that the demon saw something in me and used him to test my limits. I figured he saw my potential as a successor, but my father countered that it might just be the risk of me ruining the cult. Either way, I muttered, that old skeleton definitely has real insight. After staring deeply at me, my father turned and marched out of the pavilion, signaling for me to follow him. He guided me into the deepest depths of the Heavenly Demon Pavilion, a rumored area marked by a small plaque above a stone cavern, the Heavenly Cave. Shaken, I asked if he really wanted me inside. After all, this was the brutal training ground for Heavenly Demon candidates, a place nobody took lightly. You see, walking inside was easy, but getting out was a nightmare. Fail the trial, and you stay forever. The survival rate was a mere 50%. Half of the heavenly demon's own bloodline had died in those cold depths. Even my power-hungry brother never dared to mention going inside. Yet, every single heavenly demon in history had to survive this place first. My father mentioned he entered at my age too. Naturally, I had to ask how long it took him to escape. 2 months, he replied. I gasped. Did he seriously expect me to waste 2 months of my prime youth in some dark, damp cavern? Do not get it twisted, he shrugged. It took me 2 months, but the average is 3 whole years. He was hailed as the greatest martial genius in cult history, and I inherited his legendary heavenly martial body through our blood. I demanded to know why he was doing this to me. He coldly reminded me that his plan was to punish me. Complaining about the harshness, he shut me down, pointing out that Yong Po, whom I killed, was currently rotting underground to the cheers of his victims. His mind was completely made up. That was when I remembered his cryptic words during the hunt about having hidden motives. Did he not care if his son died, or was he secretly hoping I would emerge much stronger? Dying meant it was a punishment, but surviving this trial meant it was a massive reward. Or was he hiding me from the blood heaven blade demon, tucking me away like a sharp needle in a pocket? My father never showed his cards, making his real goals impossible to decipher. He pressed his hand to the stone tablet, channeling his energy until the heavy door groaned open, giving me a look that silently ordered me to stop crying and get inside. Fina Isahil, I promised to escape faster than he did. As the heavy stone shut, my father flashed a smug, irritating grin, telling me not to go dying inside. Slowly, I made my way down the stone cavern, finding the air surprisingly fresh and well ventilated. Light filtered down from gaps in the ceiling here and there, keeping the darkness entirely at bay. The incredibly detailed architecture proved that a legendary master artisan built this place. Suddenly, I felt a strange, subtle shift in the air pressure around me. Right then, I knew that only an absolute master with razor-sharp senses could ever detect this high-level magic formation activating. It made sense. Why else did those who died here never manage to escape? If the trials got too hard, they could have simply turned around and walked out. They died because this formation trapped them forever. Talk about a trap. If you fail just one single trial, this whole place turns into a literal death trap. After walking for a while, I stepped into a fairly massive plaza with a stone tablet explaining the first trial. Defeat every single enemy without using any sword energy or internal force. Fail to finish in time, and you wait 10 days for a retry. Stand on the red circle when ready. 10 long days. But what about food? I spotted a jar of nutrient pills on the wall, but eating that flavorless garbage for 10 straight days would drive me insane. Without hesitation, I stepped directly onto the red circle in the center. Moments later, with a heavy metallic clank, dozens of wooden training dummies slowly emerged from the ground all around me. Their target areas were painted red: necks, arms, or legs. My body reacted purely on instinct, launching forward the second they locked in place. Instinct drove my movements, deciding which skill to strike with first. The wooden dummies began to collapse. These dummies were not stationary. The floor shifted dynamically to rearrange them, and through the madness, some started dropping back underground. Wait, if I let those falling dummies sink completely, they would never rise again, instantly failing the entire trial. I targeted them first, jumping right over the other puppets trying to block my way, swinging my blade with perfect timing. They moved faster and faster by the second. I initially thought this tested agility, but it actually tested split-second decision-making. Knowing what to slice first required sharp, instant split-second logic. The layout was complicated, but not complex enough to beat my pure instincts. So, I sliced through every last dummy and cleared the gate. Before my regression, I'd never have cleared this test, even if I was rolling and flying around like a maniac. It makes sense why it resumes in 10 days, since only those who recall exactly how the puppets moved can build a winning strategy. Slow challengers? They're stuck repeating it over and over. Facing that first gateway, I finally realize why it takes people 3 whole years. The moment I pass, the second stone door grinds open. Before leaving, I notice some messy writing carved onto the exit wall by previous challengers. Succeeded on try 9. Did it on try 16. This is madness. Succeeded on try 37. I cried from the exhaustion. Am I going to die here? This is impossible. I hate my father. There is no escape. I managed to clear it on my 6th try. I dare to call myself the absolute best. But at the bottom, I spot his handwriting. Idiots, it says. Of course, my father cleared this before me. I can't even hold back my laughter because he obviously passed on his very first try. Technically, they were his ancestors. Yet, he still trash talks them. Father, I cleared it on my first try too, I think, before heading to the second gate. Just as expected, another stone slab stands in the plaza. Using the sword on the wall, cut the stone sphere in half within 2 hours. You are permitted to use sword energy or sword force. Fail to cut it, and you'll have to wait 20 days for another shot. Let's see him step into that red circle. 20 days this time. That makes this gate twice as brutal as the first. Surviving on ration pills for 3 weeks? I'd rather die. Determined to succeed, I step into the circle. A stone table rises, presenting an iron sphere the size of an adult head. 2 hours is way too long to slice one iron ball. There has to be a catch. I inspect it. The surface is incredibly smooth. This isn't normal iron, but an artificial stone tougher than steel. It's too heavy to lift without internal energy. Hundreds of swords hang along the wall, long and short, weighing heavy or light. There are even flexible belt swords. The test wants challengers to choose wisely and keep trying. I grab a standard, high-quality steel blade, stand before the sphere, take a deep breath, and slash down with everything. With a sharp metallic ring, the blade shatters into pieces, but the sphere doesn't have a single scratch. Seriously tough metal. Swinging vertically with a second sword, once again, only the blade breaks. Brute force alone won't cut it. I pull a fresh sword and channel my internal energy. A cool blue light shimmers along the blade. My pre-regression sword energy. At my current age, I can use sword chi. But full sword energy is beyond me. Mastering its intricacies only happened in my 30s. This is my first time manifesting it since regressing. Every martial artist's sword energy has a unique color, even with the same style. I always found it fascinating how the shade changes. I love mine. It's a beautiful, deep blue, shifting like the ocean and the sky. But right as I'm about to slice the sphere, a sudden sense of wrongness hits me, and I instantly cut off my energy. The glowing blade fades. Isn't this too easy? At first, I assumed the test was designed to see if we could use sword energy, since normal strikes and sword chi do nothing. It is a trial you simply cannot escape until you master it. But any late-stage expert with sword energy slices through easily. Too easy for some, impossible for others. It feels totally off, doesn't it? So he checks the wall carvings. Slicing it instantly with sword energy was the only way. I failed 89 times without it. Eventually I used it. I actually cut it without sword energy. How? No way. Lacking the ability to manifest sword energy completely leaves me stuck. What am I supposed to do after 200 days? The smell of these ration pills makes me sick. That claim about cutting it without sword energy has to be a total lie. But what I really want to find is my father's message. There it is. Seeing him swear like this is hilarious. He must have struggled to keep up his elegant image. But this time, he left an extra line: if you get angry, you lose. Lose if you get angry. Why write that when he normally just leaves a simple curse, like in the first gate? I walk back to the stone slab. You may use sword chi or sword energy. May use, not must use. It means we should try cutting it without any energy first, using it only as a last resort. That explains the long time limit. 2 hours is enough to slice hundreds of these, and the wall is loaded with backup weapons. The real challenge is splitting this without relying on sword energy. My father's warning about anger was a caution against using energy, which causes the blade to heat up. The 20-day penalty proves this test is far more demanding than the first. I just had to slice through it. Thank you, Father. Since I couldn't use sword energy, there was no time to lose. Standing before the sphere again, knowing I couldn't rely on sword energy changed my perspective. How exactly was I supposed to cut this thing? Vertically, horizontally, diagonally? Should I use a fast strike or a heavy one? I tried every angle, but only my poor swords shattered while the sphere remained untouched. After failing about 30 times, I slumped against the wall, half giving up. There had to be a way. Time was ticking away mercilessly, with less than one segment left. Would I really have to wait 20 days to try again? Despair started creeping in. Should I just cheat with sword energy and get it over with? But since my father went through the trouble of leaving a message, I couldn't just take the easy way out. Sitting there in sheer frustration, I absent-mindedly let my energy flow. It was the same energy release technique my father taught me back in the mountains. A tiny thread of energy drifted from my body and brushed against the metal. If this were a wild boar, it would already be sliced in half. As my energy wrapped around the sphere, feeling its cold surface, my eyes suddenly snapped open. Wait, what is this? There was an incredibly faint seam running along the surface, completely invisible to the eye and impossible to feel with bare hands. I poured all my concentration into wrapping my energy around it, gentle as a bird keeping an egg warm. I poured my focus into merging with the metal, and watched the line wrap all the way around, connecting back to the start. I stood up and stepped closer, kept linked to the target by my thread of power. Closing my eyes, I located that hidden seam and let my blade strike directly along it. There was no brute force behind the hit. My entire focus was on hitting that precise line with absolute accuracy. And just like that, the most incredible thing happened. The sphere split perfectly in half. Check this out, that seam was a hidden flaw meant to divide it, but the real surprise was waiting inside. A single round pellet rolled right out from the hollow center. When I saw what had rolled out of the sliced iron sphere, my heart skipped a beat, a demon essence elixir. This was the legendary pill that the cult refines only once every 10 years. A divine medicine capable of flooding a demonic cultivator with massive internal energy. The exact amount of power gained depended entirely on the user's constitution and cultivation technique. The elixir itself was absolutely incredible, but the clever design of the sphere shocked me even more. Had I sliced it with sword energy instead of the actual blade, the intense heat would have sealed the mechanism, destroying the prize. So this legendary treasure was a secret reward, meant only for someone who sliced it with pure steel, not chi. At a time when boosting my internal energy was my absolute top priority, this was basically a gift straight from the heavens. I offered a quick thank you to both my father and the heavens, then sat down and swallowed the pill. The elixir instantly melted on my tongue, sending a rushing wave of warmth through my veins as I channeled my cultivation method to absorb the energy. I had refined legendary pills in my past life, so managing this wild energy was a walk in the park. Plus, thanks to my heavenly martial body, I could absorb way more than any average cultivator. After 2 hours of focus, I opened my eyes. The massive spiritual energy soaked into my parched vessels like gentle rain on dry earth, refining into pure power stored deep inside my dantian. Standing up, I threw out a single, casual punch. The air cracked with a terrifying force, the sound echoing through the cavern so loudly it practically blew my eardrums out. I couldn't help but laugh out loud, and honestly, I earned this. Then a thought hit me. Was his lesson about releasing energy during our hunts meant to prepare me for finding this exact seam? Did my father pass this very test in the exact same manner? I quickly shook the thought away. No matter how legendary he was, there was no way he could have predicted I would end up in this cave because of the Bloodheaven Blade demon. Still, maybe he knew I would eventually find my way here, wanting me to either claim the elixir or just prove my mastery over the blade. Either way, his guidance had given me a massive boost. After circulating my new power one last time, I headed deeper to the next gate. The challenge at the third gate was to tell life from death. Failing meant I would have to wait 5 whole days to try again, a harsh penalty showing just how dangerous this trial was. But the moment I stepped onto the glowing red circle, a stone table rose up holding 10 distinct herbs. I couldn't help but grin because this trial was all about separating the healing plants from the deadly poisons. People in the martial arts world always say to beware of old men, children, and women. But the absolute deadliest threat is always hidden poison. While everyone knows the danger, very few actually bother to study the plants, but I was a master at it. Back in my past life, I used to boast to Xiong that I could draw a map of the entire Central Plains with my eyes completely shut, since I had traveled through every single corner, especially while hunting for the core essence of the 10,000-year carp. A cultivator who pulled that off knew literally every herb and poison in existence. There was absolutely no need to read the cheat sheet my father left behind. I picked the only harmless plant out of the 10. Right away, the table sinks and rises again with a brand new set, because this crazy test demands 2 correct answers in a row to eliminate luck. 10 brutal choices each time, and you must get both right, or keep eating poison for the rest of your life. Honestly, the only real way to know is by tasting them. The toxin is barely sublethal, so a single mistake leaves you writhing in agony for days. It is a brutal method, but easily the best. I pluck the safe herb, and the next door slides open. Curious about my father, I check the wall where past challengers carved their final words, a true list of endless suffering. Men curse that they would turn into poison. One weeps that he only succeeded on his 96th attempt, and another laments his hair falling out completely. Right at the very bottom is my father's single line, telling fools never to trust their luck. He actually tasted the toxic herbs one by one from his first attempt, committing every single poison to memory. Walking out after 2 months, at least my father and I managed to keep our hair. Now, the 4th trial is the final hurdle. The stone tablet warns me to survive the illusionary formation of life and death, reminding me that dying inside means dying in reality. This time, only survivors left their mark. One swears to hunt down whoever made this formation, while others write only of how terrifying and exhausting it was. My father's line carries no curse this time, just one piece of advice. Do not rest. It reads like a clue for this trial and life advice all at once, and I fully intend to honor both. After circulating my chi until my inner strength is completely full, I step into the red circle. Instantly, The world transforms into a wasteland, so realistic that the sand and rocks feel true to the touch. Honestly, there are some terrifying geniuses out there to craft an illusion this incredibly convincing. Then, faceless warriors begin to rise from the swirling sand, possessing no eyes, nose, or mouth. 30 of them. And though they are illusions, they have actual substance, carrying swords as real as stone. They surround me, pouring out pure, murderous intent. The pressure is heavy enough to make anyone without real combat experience shrink back in fear. But I have faced far worse than this before, feeling completely at ease as I lunge into the gap. The clash opens with my sword impaling 2 chests at once, and I unleash absolute hell after that. I pierce necks and bellies, snap arms, and smash heads with zero guilt because none of these things are human. Every time one bursts apart like a thunderclap, something inside me eases. Once the first 30 fall, the system grants a brief respite. I am about to catch my breath when I remember my father's warning, do not rest. So that is what he meant. Not to recover my strength during the breaks, but to keep fighting as if this is a real war where you never get time to restore your chi. This is a golden opportunity to master controlling my inner reserves under high pressure. And telling a man not to rest in a death formation is advice only my crazy father would give. I wait without recovering, and the next wave appears. Only 20 now, but they are significantly stronger and faster. They attack with swords up close, bows from afar, and hidden projectiles in midair. The pressure brings me dangerously close to death. And to be totally honest, I am absolutely thrilled. This is the first real battle I have tasted since my regression. I sprint across their shoulders, knocking flying needles out of the air, using the captured illusions as meat shields, and even fighting with my eyes closed. Even when they fall, I do not slow my pace, fighting with the intention of saving half my remaining energy. The third wave appears only 10 of them, and I am certain this is the absolute ceiling of what anyone can survive. These are the elites that have slaughtered countless challengers before, moving faster and striking harder than all previous waves combined. But instead of fear, I only feel regret that it is ending so quickly. The second the perfect moment arrives, my sword carves a dazzling arc. You see, this incredible sword technique looks completely different depending on who is watching it. The weak simply dismiss it as some flashy, useless trick, while the truly strong are left completely speechless by its hidden depth. As the ultimate form unfolds, the 10 illusions are utterly swept away, bursting like spectacular fireworks in the night sky. With the last one gone, the entire formation shatters. Since my level is so high, the life and death crisis my father intended never actually materializes. Still, the refreshing fight helps clear the dark anger packed inside my chest. A massive door opens, and a stone stele rises beside it. The inscription congratulates me on passing, and asks me to help revive the heavenly demon cult. And just like that, the heavenly cave test is complete. I cleared the whole thing in one day. When this news reaches the main sect, they are going to absolutely lose it. My father took 2 months, but his son did it in a day. That is bound to bring serious suspicion. Gupiongo will definitely foam at the mouth, screaming that I must have cheated, while the 8 demon supremes pull their hair out in shock. I wondered how this was even possible. It was just endless trouble, so I chose the smart path and stayed inside. My plan was simple. Train here for exactly 100 days to keep my father's pride intact. The training itself was brutal, but choking down those absolutely disgusting grain pills was the real nightmare. Day in and day out, I practiced the soaring sword art. It was the same technique I had spent a lifetime perfecting. But swinging that blade with this young, fresh body felt completely different. I guess that's why masters say nobody ever truly reaches the absolute limit of martial arts, no matter how long they live. Along with the sword, I worked on the energy emission skill my father taught me, trying to control the wild power from that demon essence elixir. By the 97th day, I finally had a grip on this massive surge of power. My chi emission could now shoot 10 threads at once. It wasn't quite a spider's web of energy yet, but it was getting there. I spent the final 3 days quiet, planning my next moves. On the 100th day, I shoved the massive stone slab open and stepped into the sweet, fresh air. Goodbye to those awful pills. Right at the exit, a guard from the heavenly demon hall stood waiting. The guy practically jumped out of his skin when he saw me. He quickly explained his orders were to bring me straight to the master's pavilion. He had actually just started his shift, fully expecting to wait another 100 days for me to show. It seemed my father calculated I'd survive and emerge somewhere between day 100 and day 200. That was his real opinion of my talent. He actually thought highly of me and never once believed this place would kill me. Maybe this terrifying cave was actually a massive gift in disguise. That thought kept spinning in my head as I followed the guard out. Here we go. I find my father sitting completely alone, walking the red carpet straight toward his massive throne. They call this path the Road of Blood. I couldn't help but wonder how many lives my father had to end to claim that throne, and how much more blood is going to spill to keep it. He pointed out that I took exactly 100 days. My mouth twitched a little, knowing I had actually broken that gate on day 1. I told him I had struggled hard but just couldn't beat his legendary record. He asked if I sliced the stone cleanly. I replied that I cut it perfectly without losing my temper once. I added that his clues were so clear I couldn't possibly fail, and that I kept training right through the final formation. And then, just for a split second, a real flash of proud joy crossed his face before vanishing instantly. For him, a smile was always just a mirage. He admitted I wasn't a total idiot, so I jokingly asked him whose son he thought I was. Before my regression, I always thought my father actively enjoyed watching his children fight to the death for succession. But now I see the cold truth. He forced himself to endure his own children's deaths just to secure the survival of our cult. When I asked why I was called here, he gestured for another man to enter. It was Sim Young, his chief strategist. This man held the highest authority, second only to my father. He was the head of the intelligence division, commanding every spy across the Central Plains. He seemed genuinely amazed I conquered that deadly cave in just 100 days. I called the whole ordeal a punishment. He just smiled knowingly, asking if it was truly a punishment, or maybe something else entirely. Perhaps it was a reward, or maybe just a trial I managed to survive. Then, he cut straight to the point, bringing up a major internal crisis. He had chosen me, not my brother, to handle this internal mess the very second I stepped out of training. Looking past the strategist, I locked eyes with my father on the throne. I knew instantly this was entirely his doing, and here is where things get truly dangerous. A letter exposing massive corruption within our most brutal military division had just arrived. Those guys are infamous for their explosive tempers. I groaned inwardly because their commander was the younger brother of the Bloodheaven Blade Demon. Of course he was. Sim Young explained that a similar letter arrived last year. They sent investigators, but absolutely nobody was willing to speak up. The lead investigator was brutally murdered, and the killer conveniently committed suicide right after. Naturally, the entire case was quickly swept under the rug. Now a second letter had surfaced, and they wanted me to act as the special investigator. I didn't even bother asking why. This whole mission smelled of extreme danger. It was clearly a test from my father. After all, getting caught for corruption in an elite force meant immediate execution. A guilty man facing execution wouldn't hesitate to murder the heavenly demon's own son. Since the Bloodheaven Blade Demon warned me, did I dare mess with his brother's group? I pointed out plainly that they were shoving me into a massive death trap. Sim Young calmly agreed, saying it would certainly require my life on the line. I looked at my father's stern face. It instantly reminded me of my own words, when I boasted I'd take control of these groups and tame them. I had bragged about that during a hunt. But those words were meant for when I became the heavenly demon. When he asked if I was too terrified to act now, I sighed and admitted that since he framed it like that, I couldn't really say no. By locking me up in the cave, he protected the Blade Demon's honor. Now, he was using me to keep that same powerful elder in check. Truth is, I still couldn't read his true intentions. That made me think back to our hunting night. I had asked if he could kill me for the cult, and he warned me not to talk about treachery so lightly. This was not really his decision. I realized I had faced him with a different attitude. This dangerous path was the consequence of my own choice. So I told him that since I was the one who made those grand promises under the starry sky, I would take full responsibility. My father gave a mysterious smile, seeing how cheerfully I accepted. Whatever his real plan was, I resolved to put on a great show for him. Simi Young looked completely shocked, asking if I was sure about this. I told him we could not let outsiders rob our cult's storehouse, but I did have one condition. I demanded not just the authority to investigate, but the right of summary execution. This meant I could kill any target during my investigation and never be held responsible for it. Such a request was completely unprecedented. Simi Young turned to my father, who nodded and granted it, but only if I had undeniable proof before striking. I thanked him for this dangerous mission and joked that if I died, my tombstone should say Muke was a brave man. He chuckled, promising to send an investigator from the Underworld Pavilion to assist me tomorrow. I immediately asked if they could make it a beautiful lady. He laughed out loud, saying the rumors about this young master showing a completely new side were absolutely true. After bowing, I looked back and asked if he would share one last drink with his son before I headed to my death. He did not even bother to finish listening, just stood up and walked away. I grinned at Simi Young and told him my father might look incredibly prickly on the outside, but he really cared deep down. He grunted that it did not look that way at all and quickly left. I called after him, "You are getting more and more like my father by the day." I played the cheerful young master in front of them because I swore I would never drag the dark trauma of my past life into this brand new beginning. I was going to pass this test and take one more step toward becoming the successor. The next morning, Leon informed me that our investigator was here. Knowing how deadly the demonic army was, she offered to come with me. Instead of answering, I asked if this investigator was cute, teasing her not to get jealous of our cozy time until she stared at me like I was insane and said it was a guy. The person she escorted in was surprisingly short, carrying this deeply gloomy, depressed vibe around him. He was definitely a man, introducing himself in a flat tone as Seo Darong, a special investigator from the Underworld Pavilion. Now get this, his name literally translates to Great Dragon, which his tiny frame totally contradicted. I sighed, complaining that I specifically requested their most stunning female investigator. He looked momentarily confused, then shrugged, saying that in his own eyes, maybe he was the most beautiful woman around. Leon giggled, and I let out a deeply dramatic sigh. I told him to spill everything he knew about the demonic army, warning him that if he stuttered once, things would get tragic. He answered immediately, as if he had prepared his entire life for this. The demonic army has 6 divisions, all answering to one commander who only takes orders from the leader. Each division has 30 soldiers, making it 181 men total, with the 1st division leader serving as the second in command. He handed me a thick file stuffed with incredibly detailed profiles. I pulled out a random page, asking about a guy named Young Pio, absolutely sure there was no way he memorized every detail. He answered instantly. Young Pio has served in the 1st division for 7 years, wielding a palm technique known as Guhanjang. He is incredibly ruthless, loves booze and gambling, and has caused multiple major incidents that the demonic army quietly swept under the rug. I pulled another profile, and he knew that one too. When I asked if he really memorized all 180, he quickly corrected me to 181. I called him an absolute genius, but he humbly insisted it was just hard work. Underneath that depressing gloom of his, the guy was dangerously sharp. When I kept prodding, he finally admitted that he had entered the Underworld Pavilion as the top-ranking student. He then confessed he has no mirror or girlfriend because he lacks the spine to stand up to rude bosses. I laughed incredibly hard at that. Let me tell you, I instantly liked this guy. He knew their commander inside out, a dangerous man named Gyuyong, younger brother of the legendary demon Gucha. Over the last 8 years, Gyuyong survived countless deadly missions, transforming this demonic army into a highly feared, top-tier elite force. He still lived in his brother's shadow, despite having a face that looked almost identical to Gucha's. But he lacked that intense, freezing cold flame in his eyes. I then asked to see the anonymous letter, which had crooked handwriting to hide the writer's identity. The message was incredibly stark, exposing heavy corruption and demanding a full investigation. I asked Seo Darong a simple question. If you found out, would you send an anonymous letter? He answered without a single second of hesitation, absolutely not. It wasn't because he didn't care, but because he knew sending one wouldn't change a single thing. There was a sad sense of defeat in his answer that matched his gloomy vibe perfectly. When I asked if the pavilion was built to reform the cult, he quietly replied that they were merely the sword used by reformers, not the ones making the rules. I could tell whoever sent this report knew they would die if they got caught. They disguised their writing but sent it anyway. Leon suggested it wasn't justice driving him, but a grudge against the corrupt. Honestly, that made sense. I said we had to find this man. If we looked weak, he would never come forward. Then I asked Seo Darang if he was scared. I reminded him the last investigator had died. He told me the dead man was his immediate superior, the mentor who taught him everything. A quiet sadness lingered beneath his words. Now I understood why he memorized every single detail of the demonic army. He wanted to avenge his senior. I told him that death wasn't meaningless. It brought us right here. And honestly, he should be scared, because we're dealing with men who have absolutely nothing left to lose. He said he refused to be scared of such filthy people. A massive anger lay sleeping inside that small body. As I left with him, Leon followed and begged to come along. I refused, telling her this was an official mission and to rest. She had to stay far away from me. She watched us leave with worry, then spun around in confusion as I used my energy to pat her head from behind. Don't worry, Leon. I have traveled a very long way, just for days exactly like this. The Demon Dragon Court, where the entire demonic army lived, it sat in the western district of the main school's outer grounds. It was massive and luxurious, fitting for an elite force. When we reached the entrance, 2 gatekeepers built twice the size of normal men blocked our path. Seo Darang announced himself as the Underworld Pavilion's special investigator and ordered them aside, brave despite his small frame. But they just mocked him. One muttered that the special investigator didn't look very special. The other insisted that no one entered without explicit permission. Co Durang produced the order and said the higher authority stood right here. As their voices grew louder, and one guard dismissed it as absolute nonsense, Co Durang kicked him in the shin without hesitation. The giant clutched his leg and raised a fist, but he didn't dare strike an investigator since that meant instant prison. Instead, he muttered about just beating this rat and paying the compensation. This was exactly the level of the demonic army. And honestly, it gets even worse. Many in our cult lived purely on impulse with zero restraint, completely losing the true ideology of the demonic path, if we ever even had it. Just a bunch of wicked people bound by the delusional faith that brutality and raw strength equaled justice and truth. If someone accused us of that, I couldn't deny it. After watching long enough, I stepped in and asked them if they knew who I was. Even then, they didn't back down. So I told them if they actually knew it was me, they'd never act this way. So I drove my foot straight into his groin with all my force, since the shin kick clearly didn't work. He crumpled, screaming. I turned to the other, asking if he was seriously talking about paying compensation right in front of me. My fist put that giant down in a single blow. Co Durang stared, absolutely shocked that I'd openly beat up the demonic army, so I told him to stop standing around and lead the way. Before we could even reach the main building, another group of cultists blocked our path. Co Durang raised the command letter, asking if they all wanted to rot in prison for obstruction, but they just sneered. They looked down on him because of his height, until the crowd suddenly parted and a man stepped forward. He introduced himself as Godang, leader of the 1st Division. Co Durang sent a telepathic message, warning me this guy was basically second in command and one of the most notorious in the demonic army. Godang caught his lips moving and snarled that the bastard had a death wish, daring to send a secret message right in front of him. They ignored me completely because the demonic army fully backed my brother, with even their commander supporting him, which let them openly disregard my presence. Co Durang held firm, and I liked him for it. After dealing with the trash from the Bloodheaven Blade Demon line and this swaggering army, watching him stand his ground felt refreshing. When he threatened to arrest them all, Godang and his men just roared with laughter, daring him to try. These guys wouldn't have flinched even before the enforcement martial artists. Co Durang glanced back at me, completely out of moves. My turn to step in. I walked up to Godang and firmly grabbed his hand like a welcome friend, warmly asking when we last met and saying how good it was to see him. I quietly told him I urgently needed the commander, so we should drop these childish territorial games. The path opened up, and we walked through together, still holding hands. Godang's men stood there completely bewildered at how easily their leader had backed down. We parted at the stairs, and a shocked Co Durang asked if I knew Godang. I told him I just met the guy today, but he'll be eating with his left hand for a while because I broke his hand during that handshake. He was so shocked he literally shouted, asking why Godang didn't just order his men to attack us. I explained that doing so would immediately expose his broken hand, which would be an unbearable embarrassment in front of his subordinates. But that is not all. When Godang tried to fight back, I sent a quiet warning that if he made a move, remembering what I did to his disciple's arm, he is way too terrified to try anything. I warned Co Durang that the hot-tempered Godang will not stay quiet and any retaliation will end with his head exploding. Talk about a prophecy. Co Durang looks at me with brand new respect, almost commenting on my personality before trailing off. When I ask if he thinks my style is dirty, he goes dead silent, unable to lie. I tell him that being hated by some just means being loved by others. But guards block us at the office, saying no one enters without an appointment. Since I do not want to watch Co Durang argue with them, I flash the official order, showing off the heavenly demon emblem. I look them dead in the eye and warn them that blocking this order means blocking our Lord himself. At the mention of my father, they visibly flinch. So I ask if they really want to treat the Lord so lightly. When I ask if I should report their behavior that way, they desperately deny it, until a voice inside tells them to let us enter. Co Durang finally realizes how to deal with gatekeepers, that the absolute authority of the heavenly demon is meant exactly for moments like this. Now, look at this guy. Demonic Army Commander Gu Cheongyang looks surprisingly ordinary, but his massive aura can easily intimidate his largest soldiers, even while living in his older brother's shadow. I casually mention he is harder to meet than my own father, and he apologizes, calling his gatekeepers fundamentally ignorant. I say they clearly have nothing to do but pick fights, and suggest he make them read a book. He claims that ignorance is just a form of bravery, but I snap back that these days, the smart people are the brave ones. Even in this tiny exchange, we are locked in a heavy battle of wills, both of us testing each other. Completely unbothered by my words, he asks why I took over this investigation, so I give him a quick answer. I claim my father wants to punish me for a slip-up during our hunting trip. He nods with fake understanding, though he is definitely imagining a dozen hidden political motives behind my arrival. Pretending to be totally indifferent, he asks if we received another anonymous letter, though he is secretly nervous because our pavilion is no joke. I calmly tell him that details are strictly classified. When he pushes for info, acting like we are close, I honestly marvel at his sheer shamelessness. You have to be incredibly brazen to survive in the middle of these faction wars. Then I tell him straight out that yes, we got a letter, and he claims it is just as he expected. Beside me, Seo Daryong's panicked eyes ask if I should really be spilling everything, but my look tells him it is totally fine. Seeing this, the commander smirks, thinking my open attitude is incredibly amateurish, which plays right into my hands. I explain that our pavilion is forced to send someone whenever a suspicious letter arrives. He smoothly claims his innocence, saying that managing rough soldiers always leads to false rumors. I point out that slander requires brains, and ask if ignorant soldiers would even think to write one. But he warns me that stupid people are often dangerously ambitious. He says when ignorance and ambition mix, things that should never happen can suddenly become reality. Despite the subtle threat, I keep smiling, asking him to tolerate the temporary inconvenience while I wrap up quickly. I casually ask if it is not common knowledge that the Bloodheaven Blade Demon completely backs my older brother. He claims a brother is just a brother, and that he actually supports me. Hearing that blatant lie, I just smile and say it is incredibly reassuring. But watch his face here. As I stand up, he adds a quick warning out of supposedly genuine concern. I ask if he means I might get murdered like the previous investigator, and his tone shifts completely. He tells me the Lord would never send me here just to die. I laugh and walk away, feeling his intense stare burning into my back as his face likely turns rigid. Then you had better be extremely careful, I think, because since my father sent me here, it means either you or I must end up dead. While I trade barbs with the commander, strategist Sima Myung is elsewhere, watching heavenly demon Jeom Woojin polish his legendary blade. Sima Myung remarks that it has been a long time since my father unsheathed the Black Demon Sword, one of our cult's 4 legendary weapons. The greatest is the heavenly demon sword my father always carries, followed by this Black Demon Sword, the Evil Spirit Sword, and finally the White Flower Sword. Each blade has its own nature, with the Black Demon Sword being purely destructive. When Sima Myung asks if my father intends to pass it to me, my father's hand pauses. He slowly resumes, saying that if I am lucky, I will inherit it. Sima Myung immediately guesses the weapon will be my ultimate reward for solving this crisis. Sima Myung just couldn't understand this decision, since he didn't think my recent actions were enough to face the demonic army. In fact, he was certain the Black Demon Sword would end up right back in the treasure vault. Sima Myung felt he should have handled this himself. The previous investigator's murder proved the demonic army's commander had already blackmailed the Underworld Pavilion's head, so Sima Myung wanted his own heavenly communication pavilion to settle the score. But then my father dropped a massive bombshell, revealing I had told the commander that our own cult had completely lost its demonic path. Sima Myung instantly froze. Those words insulted the heavenly demon and Sima Myung himself. Shaking with pure anxiety rather than anger, he asked if that was why my father wanted me dead. My father calmly replied that if a man is going to talk that big, he needs to back it up with actions, which sounded to Sima Myung like a final death sentence for my sheer arrogance. Sima Myung watched my father clean his blade, a cold monster who sent his own flesh and blood to die without blinking. He asked if my father wanted me to retrieve that lost path myself. My father shrugged, and Sima Myung admitted that, given my recent crazy achievements, it might actually be worth looking forward to. He bowed politely and left, casting one last lingering glance over his shoulder. My father seemed totally indifferent to whether I lived or died, yet the devotion with which he polished that sword was incredibly intense. It left Sima Myung wondering if my father secretly believed I could take down the commander. But by the time Sima Myung reached the end of that carpet, he came to a massive realization. Watch this. That legendary Black Demon Sword was going back to the vault. Meanwhile, in the quarters the demonic army assigned us, we stood in total shock. The place was a complete dump, thick dust everywhere, with cobwebs hanging from the rafters. Seo Daryong grumbled that this disrespectful treatment was completely insane. I simply told him that to these people, I was already a dead man walking who would lose the succession war. And in our world, losing means death. Even worse, anyone standing near me risked getting purged right alongside me. I pointed straight at him and ran a finger across my throat, but he didn't even flinch. He insisted that out of respect for my father, they shouldn't treat me like garbage. I laughed and told him my father couldn't care less about stuff like that he actually watches this play out with amusement, and this trashy room was probably Godang's doing, not the commander's. Seo Daryong muttered that Go Dang held one hell of a petty grudge. I replied that the bastard was just shortening his own lifespan, and we got to cleaning. He insisted on helping even when I told him to relax, constantly stealing glances, absolutely baffled that a highborn noble like me was scrubbing floors. But if he only knew how hellish my life was before I regressed, he'd understand this was actually nothing. Afterwards, he brought over some fresh blankets and asked if I genuinely planned on sleeping in this dump. I told him we had to catch the rat who sent that letter, and staying here was our best bet. He immediately offered to stay alone so I could sleep somewhere nice. I jokingly warned him that some creep obsessed with skinny guys might break in at night. To my surprise, he took it literally and insisted we sleep in the same room. When I playfully asked what if I was that creep, he deadpanned that he'd just have to confess his own secret feelings too. That dry joke sent an absolute shiver right through the room. Either way, my stomach was growling, so we headed out to grab some food. Stepping outside, we ran straight into Go Dang waiting at the entrance. His crushed hand was heavily bandaged, but I cheerfully acted like nothing happened. I loudly gasped at his bandaged wrist, teasingly asking how on earth such a terrible accident could happen to a legendary warrior like him. He glared at me like a feral beast, snarling that he would never forget my incredibly cowardly ambush. The idiot genuinely thought I cheap-shotted him, completely blind to the fact that the result would be exactly the same in a fair fight. Any future plots he cooked up would just be a dangerous tightrope walk over his own grave. As I played dumb, he ground his teeth, sneering that having royal blood doesn't stop a knife from slicing my gut open. I simply asked him if he could even grip a knife with a shattered hand like that. He spat back that we'd see who bleeds first, but I just gave him a cheerful wave as he stomped off, absolutely boiling with rage. Seo Daryong nervously asked if I was pushing him too far. I told him Go Dang was the provocateur here after all. The bastard waited around just to threaten my life and talk about gutting me. Seo Daryong admitted that made sense. I explained that people foolishly try to rationalize the actions of absolute villains, making excuses for them when they shouldn't. We must judge them with absolute severity. Instead of keeping his head down, this particular trash was practically begging to be put out of his misery. Since we had to deal with such a disgusting rat, I declared we were treating ourselves to the most ridiculously expensive feast in town, but Seo Daryong showed zero excitement, apologetically admitting he didn't really enjoy eating all that much. I told him to go eat noodles then. The guy really had a tiny appetite, leaving half his plate untouched, though nothing went to waste since I polished off his leftovers. But wait till you see what was waiting right on our bed, 2 dead crows. Seo Daryong, looking completely pale, immediately offered to swap out the blankets. But I told him to grab those corpses and follow me because right now, dead crows are exactly what we need. Seo Daryong follows along with the crows, looking completely bewildered. I instruct him to hang them right in the middle of the hallway where the demonic army marches most. Once they are up, the scene quickly attracts the soldiers, who begin swearing and demanding why anyone would hang dead crows to bring bad luck. They curse the unlucky bastards from the underworld pavilion, with one guard shouting that the spot is perfect for a torn-apart corpse instead. Their numbered uniforms make it easy to spot the divisions, and the first division guys near the entrance are definitely shouting the loudest insults. And bad-mouthing our underworld pavilion is basically the same as insulting me. And right here, the air gets incredibly tense as a giant steps up, asking if this is too far. And I just mockingly ask who said that since they all look equally ugly. He steps forward once more and introduces himself as the mighty Jang Ho. This is the 3rd division leader, the biggest brute in the entire demonic army, with a jagged scar running across his face. Seo Daryong quickly sends me a silent message warning that Jang Ho is the strongest of the 6 division leaders, a hothead with an absolutely terrifying, overwhelming presence. Thick, dark energy rolls off him, literally stealing our breath away for a moment. He asks what problem I have with hanging creepy things right where his men walk. I shoot back, asking if it is not better than tossing them on someone's bed, but he just growls at me to stop ruining the mood and punish the culprit. I admit he makes a fair point, and order investigator Seo Daryong to take them down. Seo Daryong quietly removes the crows, while the soldiers mock us as cowards who only back down after being threatened. But we ignore their laughter and head inside. Once inside, Seo Daryong's face is flushed with wounded pride. He demands to know why we put them up just to back down so easily, and I explain I wanted to smoke out the writer of that anonymous letter. When he asks in total shock if I actually found them, I nod, making his eyes widen in disbelief, and I point to the dead crows, telling him they are the ones who helped us, so he should give them a proper burial. The next day, the real investigation begins. Now here is where things get really interesting. I gather his division together, and since Jang Ho is already irritated, he is making no effort to hide it. He demands to know what is going on, asking why we are starting with his squad instead of the first. and I calmly tell him it is simply because I feel like it. When he asks if I am holding some petty grudge over yesterday, I innocently ask what exactly happened yesterday. I order him to hand over all ledgers so we can audit every single coin, making his men whisper anxiously, because even normal people hide dirty secrets when you start digging. That goes double for these brutal demonic soldiers, where the nicest guy in the room is basically a ruthless mob boss. Jang Ho roars that even I do not have the authority to pull this off. But I tell him that I absolutely do, sending him into a rage as he smashes my desk. I coldly warn him that outright rebellion is an executable offense, and hearing that, several of his own men quickly rush forward to hold him back. Pushing his buttons further, I announce we will start the investigation with him, and he loses it, shouting that we should take this outside while ordering his men to leave. His loyal officers beg him to calm down and keep his composure, but he barks at them to get out, and they give me deadly glares as they leave, making it obvious they follow him out of deep respect, not just fear. Once the room is completely empty, Jang Ho venomously promises that I will regret this. His scar twists menacingly, but I just stare at him in silence before leaning in and whispering, asking just how long he intends to keep testing my patience. He visibly flinches, and the moment I ask if he is the one who secretly sent that tip-off letter, his eyes instantly give him away. The big guy is a terrible liar, his voice shaking right after his eyes did, and he quickly confesses before desperately asking how on earth I figured it out. I point out that yesterday he stepped up when there was zero need to, obviously trying to throw off any suspicion from the high command. Plus, his division is easily the most disciplined of the 6, being the only ones who did not curse at the crows, and he just threw a tantrum solely to protect them. A leader who runs his squad with that much honor would naturally hate seeing internal corruption rot the army from the inside out. Though in all honesty, that is not entirely how I deduced his secret. The second Seo Daryong called him the strongest leader. My memories from before my regression suddenly flashed back to me. In my past life, one of the division commanders died around this exact time, the one hailed as the ultimate powerhouse, and I always wondered how someone that strong could fall. I was absolutely certain now that it was Jang Ho who sent that letter back then. He must have tried to take care of the corruption himself after the investigations failed, only to be assassinated by a traitor among his ranks. He nods, admitting he kept specific details out because he doubted a simple letter would actually change anything. He even suspected the underworld pavilion might be controlled by the sinister influence of the Bloodheaven Blade Demon. He never imagined the young master would show up in person, confessing he thought their fate was sealed the moment he heard I was on my way. I turn to Seo Daryong and playfully ask if being this brutally honest is some new trend among the youth, but he dryly points out that I am younger than both of them. So I asked Jang Ho what was actually happening. He revealed the commander was exploiting the demonic army for greed, taking massive bribes to deploy his elite men as hired assassins. Even I, who rarely got startled, was completely stunned because with elite demonic masters on the move, they definitely were not fighting for small sums. Seo Daryong asked how they pulled it off, so Jang Ho explained they used vacation time and training missions as cover. Unlike Seo Daryong, I immediately saw the truth and stated the whole 1st Division was in on the scam, which totally shocked Jang Ho. I pointed out how the 1st Division blocked us earlier, swore loudest at the dead crows, and reacted together in perfect sync during the chaos. A single choice reveals absolutely everything. That is when I asked him how he uncovered the entire plot. The warrior who supposedly killed himself after murdering the previous investigator had actually been Jang Ho's closest friend. He was the one who sent that anonymous warning, but he did not take his own life. They forced him, right after he confessed to Jang Ho. In my previous life, I never heard about this incident, only that Jang Ho died, meaning the truth was buried forever. He told me they entered the demonic cult together, making that lost friend feel just like real family. And after the murders, the survivors were watched so relentlessly they could barely breathe. A brutal cover-up ordered by the commander and executed by Godang. Now think about this, that would mean a massive scandal, exposing both their commander and the 1st Division. Murdering an investigator and framing the innocent whistleblower was easily the darkest crime in our cult's entire history. If my father and Sima Myung did not know, they definitely suspected something. That is why they sent me to see if I could survive the commander. Father, I always thought the story of lions throwing cubs off cliffs was a lie, because as they plummet, the parent races down to catch them before they hit bottom. I told Jang Ho he had a truly loyal brother, but he softly replied that his friend was the honorable one, and that a real brother would have fought back instantly. But I countered that would have only gotten him killed. Not everyone in the demonic army was complete scum. Seo Daryong looked deeply moved as well, since the murdered investigator was a respected senior of his, meaning both men lost someone precious back then. Looking at them, I felt real hope now, for our dark path. envisioning a future where honorable men like them would lead the heavenly demon cult. I thanked Jang Ho for his incredible courage, and he admitted he decided to trust me the second I solved the mystery. When I asked if his past records held any dirty secrets, he proudly told me to dig as deep as I wanted. So I reminded him, everyone has dirt, and even the cleanest record can be twisted into something filthy, but promised I would not push. Stepping outside to the waiting 3rd Division, I loudly announced that Leader Jang Ho had agreed to surrender all files so they could finally return home. Jang Ho played along perfectly, yelling for them to wait and promising he would clear his name, though his eyes silently beamed with immense gratitude. Taking the blame made his men trust him more. In my past life, Jang Ho died. This time, he lives. Saving those who deserve to live was my entire purpose. Shutting the door, Seo Daryong admitted I was completely different from the dark rumors. I urged him to be honest. He apologized, admitting everyone said I did not fit in our brutal cult. I just laughed, calling it a huge compliment, because why would anyone want to fit into this corrupt system? Ruling through raw fear is outdated, and we desperately need reform. His eyes lit up for a second at the word change, but honestly, it is never as simple as it sounds. When he asked if I would truly transform things if I became the next heavenly demon, my real answer was simple. Of course I would, because without change, my entire family gets slaughtered, and our cult will be sealed away forever. Instead, I casually told him I would rather wander the Central Plains and enjoy my life than take that heavy crown. I actually half meant it. Once I finally end Hwa Moogi, I fully intend to travel and enjoy my freedom. He noted most people would sell their very souls for that position, asking if he seemed ungrateful. I laughed and called him power-obsessed. His eyes widened, so I asked if helping someone brought him joy. When he said no, I asked if a big promotion did, and he nodded yes, sighing deeply while mocking himself for being power-obsessed after all. I reassured him everyone defines happiness differently. Some chase money, some want peace, and a select few pursue chivalry. He wondered if anyone could truly find joy in chivalry, or if it just sounded completely fake. I told him it was very real, because I once met a man so selfish he used chivalry to fool even himself. He had no virtue, yet died convinced he walked the path of righteousness. Men like that honestly unsettle me far more than the openly ambitious. Still, I never criticize them, because that is just their way of surviving. There are plenty in the martial world who genuinely live by a code of honor, true heroes whose hearts are simply too big for ordinary people to understand. He sighs, admitting that as a guy who only cares about strength, he just does not get it. It makes me chuckle. Sure, his peers might find him incredibly annoying, but to me, this side of him is actually pretty endearing. I tell him to stop that awkward self-reflection, go dig up Jang Ho's files, and bring more investigators from the Underworld Pavilion, so we can make this whole thing look like a real, massive probe. He gets it. As I stand by the window looking out, I spot him. Right across the street, the demonic army commander is watching me from the opposite building. Our eyes met, but I act like I do not even see him. After all, I am not focused on his pathetic little figure, but the massive heavenly demon pavilion towering far behind him. By the afternoon, Seo Daryong arrives with over a dozen investigators, and the whole place finally starts looking like a massive crime scene. Rumors spread that Jang Ho will search everyone, making them panicky, and that evening, get ready, because everything completely blows up. An investigator comes running to grab me, and by the time I arrive, the hallway outside the interrogation room is a total disaster zone. A massive brawl has broken out between the investigators and the demonic army. I step right between them, stopping the fight before it can turn into an absolute bloodbath. One of our guys is flat on the floor, bleeding from his face with shattered ribs. Seo Daryong tries to step in, but they beat him down too. I order them to get the injured man to the infirmary immediately, and the other officers quickly carry him away. The man behind it, 1st Division leader Godang, stands there smugly with his crew, clearly loving every second. When I ask if he is responsible, he just smirks and says yes. I remark that it feels like a prophecy is about to come true today, and Seo Daryong swallows hard. Hearing that, Godang mocks me with his own prophecy, claiming this young master will get kicked out of the cult and end up begging the righteous sects of the Martial Alliance for scraps. His men burst into roaring laughter, but instead of getting mad, I smile and call it a splendid future. Hey, surviving a loss and getting to live off other people without working a single day, that is basically every man's dream, so I genuinely thank him. His face goes rigid when he realizes I am mocking him. I calmly ask why he beat up my investigator. He claims the guy bumped his shoulder without apologizing, so he decides to teach him some manners as a personal favor to me. I look him in the eye and counter that his own massive shoulder did the bumping, and that an apology would not have saved my man anyway. Godang just laughs, not even denying it. So I give him one word: poison. Confused, he asks what I mean by that. I explain that his loyal subordinates are actually his poison, because as long as they are watching, his pride will never let him back down. And that kind of pride? It is not honor, it is just sheer arrogance. I remind him that last year he murdered a fellow cult member using the exact same excuse, and the year before that, killed 3 low-ranking men in a tavern brawl that the demonic army quietly swept under the rug. The look in his eyes makes it pretty clear he just sees me as some rookie who does not respect his elders. So, I ask if he actually knows what powers I was granted when I took this job. Aside from being an investigator, I hold the power of summary execution. The entire hallway falls silent at those words. But Godang just sneers, asking what good a fancy title is if I do not have the guts to use it, and his thugs crack up all over again. See? This is the exact poison I am talking about. A blind idiot, desperately playing to the crowd, flexing his muscles when he should be absolutely terrified. He has no clue about the grand stage I am building just for him. The moment I step closer, his guards rush to block me, warning that touching them means war with the entire demonic army. I just sneer, pointing out that at least I do not hide behind my underlings. Godang raises his heavily bandaged right hand, grumbling that he is only injured because of a certain spineless coward. So, I raise my own right hand, swearing that I will not use it, or even touch my sword. He flinches, then mockingly asks if I will run crying to the heavenly demon once I get hurt. His men roar with laughter, and with every chuckle, my trap pulls tighter. I tell him that not only will I hold nobody responsible if I get hurt, but even if I die here today, absolutely no one will face the blame. I tap my sheathed sword twice to seal the oath. Only then did he finally accept, drawing his sharp blade with his left hand. He is fully confident he can fight just as well with his left, while I slowly step forward, keeping my right hand clasped behind my back. Since he still looks worried I might use my right hand in desperation, I tell him if I do, he can order his men to jump in and slaughter me. He just scoffs, claiming I have grown arrogant after a petty match with the Southern Heaven Sword family. I tell him his own little show is way more amusing, and he charges. To me, this is just some free training, since fighting a division leader is an invaluable experience. Godang holds absolutely nothing back, but every missed swing of his sword sends a wave of disappointment through the crowd. The spectators think I am barely escaping, but my mind is completely calm. Honestly, I could easily beat this guy with just my left hand. I settle on 40 moves. Since I beat the Bloodheaven Blade Demon's disciple in 20, 40 against a division leader seems balanced enough for the rumors. 40th move, I close in and grab his sword wrist. He tries to wrench his arm free, but I spin my body and twist his arm like wet laundry. His wrist snaps with a loud pop. He screams, my fist drives into his face, and he falls. I mount his chest and strike down with my left fist, holding back my chi entirely because a real blow would easily kill him. One soldier charges. Sitting on Godang's stomach, I draw my sword. I draw my blade and swing almost idly, splitting his abdomen so he collapses forward. Absolutely nobody expected me to end him in one casual strike. 2 of Godang's most foolish followers draw their weapons and charge. I spring up and thrust twice. Their blades only graze me, but mine pierce their necks, sending them down in fountains of blood. And just like that, it is a total bloodbath. 3 allies are already dead, and you can bet the rest are terrified. I shout that the men who just died committed treason. Hearing that, everyone freezes in their tracks. Walking over to the fallen Godang, I tell him his crime is no different. He brutally injured an envoy sent directly by the cult leader. Looking down coldly, I ask if he even cares about the families of the people he murdered in that tavern brawl, who lost fathers and husbands while he never cared. Who gave him the right to slaughter our cult members? He begs me for his life, his bloody face showing how desperately he wants to survive. With blood gushing from his mouth, he swears he will repent empty lies, because I know he will just do it again. He frantically promises he never will, but I remind him he has made that promise before, and his bloody past speaks for itself. I raise my foot and stomp down with everything I have. His head bursts like a ripe watermelon, ending him instantly. Absolute silence. No one ever imagined I would actually crush the head of the commander's absolute favorite guy. I shout to the surrounding soldiers that treason carries the penalty of immediate execution. I ask if they still want to hold on to their weapons. With their leader dead, they collectively sheathe their swords. Overwhelmed by the raw martial power that just cut down 3 of their own, I order the entire 1st Division to withdraw. I warn them that anyone stepping out of their room will be executed for treason, and nobody dares to disobey. Nearby, the watching investigator stares at me with absolute shock, mixed with clear joy and deep admiration.